Good morning and welcome to today's New York City Council hearing for the Committee on Sanitation and Solid Waste Management. If you would like to testify, you may submit your testimony at testimony@council.nyc.gov. At this time, please silence all electronic devices. No one may approach the dais at any time during this hearing. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank the Sanitation Committee members, DSNY Commissioner Jessica Tisch, Deputy Commissioner Robert Orlin, and Deputy Commissioner Frank Marshall, and BIC Commissioner Elizabeth Crotty, and BIC Director of Policy Nego Matias. I'd also like to thank the members of the public who are here to testify. To minimize disruption, please place electronic devices on vibrate or silent mode. I would also like to thank council members present today. Julie Menon, thank you for joining us, council member. In 2019, the council enacted Local Law 199, requiring the establishment of a new system for the collection of a portion of commercial waste produced in New York City. The purpose of today's hearing is to learn more about the city's implementation of this law and the new commercial waste zone system. According to the council's findings and the legislative purpose of Local Law 199, the current commercial waste collection system is plagued by dangerous driving and insufficient attention to public safety, leading to dozens of deaths on New York City streets, harmful environmental and public health impacts, such as excessive emissions, truck emissions, and noise pollution, dangerous conditions for commercial waste collection workers, and poor customer service, such as opaque pricing, putting small businesses at a disadvantage. According to the same findings, this new system will result in carters adequately training their workers on safe practices, a dramatic reduction in truck traffic and roadway wear and tear, reduced incentives for unsafe driving, enhanced protections for commercial waste collection workers, advancement of the city's efforts to reduce waste and increase recycling, and overall promotion of the public health, safety, and welfare of all New Yorkers. Pursuant to Local Law 199, DSNY has divided the city into 20 commercial waste zones and has since evaluated responses to its request for proposals from private carters interested in servicing one or more of these zones. In performing such evaluation, DSNY was required to consider 14 distinct factors, such as the applicant's proposed rates, financial statements, health and safety plan, and history of compliance with federal, state, and local law. Local Law 199 prohibits DSNY from awarding a single carter contracts to perform collection services in more than 15 zones. In January of this year, 18 carters were awarded contracts to perform collection services in one or more zones. Nearly 4 years since the passage of Local Law 199, DSNY has announced that it will conduct a pilot program for the city's first commercial waste zone, starting in September of this year. This will be conducted in a zone known as Queens Central, which encompasses the diverse neighborhoods of Corona, East Elmhurst, Forest Hills, Glendale, Jackson Heights, Rego Park, not sure I pronounced that correctly, and Ridgewood. We look forward to hearing detailed information from the Department of Sanitation about their implementation of Local Law 199 and learning from the Business Integrity Commission, which I refer to as BIC or BIC interchangeably at this hearing, about their collaboration with DSNY in implementing the new commercial waste zone system and its future plans to monitor the relevant licenses for their good character, honesty, and integrity. We're also looking forward to hearing from members of the community about their concerns and priorities regarding this new commercial waste landscape. We're also hearing a few bills today. These include a pre-considered intro that I've introduced in relation to mergers, acquisitions, and combinations of awardees of agreements to provide commercial waste collection services. In keeping with the spirit of Local Law 199, it is imperative that no one entity be awarded more than 15 zones at any given time. And this bill would seek to ensure that. We will also be hearing intro number 352 in relation to creating a commercial waste zones working group, and intro number 696 in relation to establishing organic waste composting facilities in each borough, both sponsored by Councilmember and Committee Member Sandy Nurse. I look forward to the dialogue regarding these bills today. I would like to thank everyone on my team and the Sanitation Task Force for their work on this legislation and oversight hearing preparations. Today, we will begin the hearing with testimony from DSNY and BIC, followed by members of the public. I will now turn it over to our committee counsel to administer the oath.
Good morning. Could you please raise your right hands? Thank you. Do you affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in your testimony before the council and to respond honestly to council member questions?
I do.
Thank you. You may begin your testimony. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Abreu and members of the Committee on Sanitation and Solid Waste Management. I am Jessica Tisch, Commissioner of the New York City Department of Sanitation, and I am joined today by Deputy Commissioner for Legal Affairs, Robert Orlin, and Assistant Commissioner for Commercial Waste, Frank Marshall. New York's strongest collect and process 24 million pounds of waste each day. Every New Yorker knows about their vital and unceasing effort. But that incredible daily undertaking accounts for only about 50% of the trash on our streets. The other half, 20 million pounds produced by our businesses, large and small, is not collected by DSNY, but rather by a Byzantine network of private waste haulers. This system is badly outdated, and its overall structure and day-to-day operations have not kept pace with the best practices around waste management. This has a real impact on the hardworking people of the private sanitation industry, on New Yorkers who live in mixed-use neighborhoods or near waste transfer stations, and of course, on all small businesses. While DSNY does not collect this waste, Local Law 199 of 2019 clearly and specifically directs the department to regulate its collection. This law, crafted after years of negotiations between the City Council and the carting industry, was designed to bring a perceived Wild West of commercial carting under control, to create a cavalry of sorts in the form of the DSNY Bureau of Commercial Waste. The implementation of this massive reform required careful planning. As you all know, finalizing even a single city contract can take months or years. This law required no fewer than 18 contracts comprising 65 awards. It required the formation of committees, the development of new tech platforms, and extremely detailed contract negotiations, totaling in the tens of thousands of pages of documents. This work was done with a focus on the core goals of the law: increase safety, improve sustainability, and prevent massive price spikes that have hampered similar reform efforts around the country. I am proud to report that this effort is well on track, with the first of the 20 non-exclusive commercial waste zones described in the law slated to go online this fall in Corona, Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, and other neighborhoods in a zone designated as Queens Central. I will now provide updates on several key components of the implementation plan. First is safety. It is no secret that the commercial carting industry has long been plagued by safety issues, both for people working in the industry and for the public at large. As part of this program, all commercial carters are required to make substantial upgrades to the safety equipment of their vehicles, including the installation of backup cameras, auxiliary exterior lighting, and GPS monitoring systems like the ones used by municipal waste vehicles. Requiring carters to make this investment will make a real difference in safety. All workers in this sector are also receiving a new mandated safety training, 40 hours either this year or when they begin their careers, plus an 8-hour refresher every year thereafter. This must be completed citywide by the end of this month and is well underway. There was no standardized safety training requirement prior to Local Law 199. Any updates to this training that may be needed, as well as other suggestions on how to improve worker and public safety in this industry, will come from the new Safety Task Force created by the law. Local Law 199 outlines 11 members of this task force, including 4 individuals appointed by the City Council. The current council appointees were named by then Speaker Johnson. I expect the task force to meet this month, and I would like to remind the council of its opportunity to update these holdover appointees before then, as the Adams administration recently did. Our appointees represent a broad range of policy knowledge and professional experience. All awardees were also required to submit written health and safety plans, and operationalizing those plans is a mandatory contractual requirement to operate within a commercial waste zone. But all of these requirements would be moot without substantial new oversight authority, which DSNY receives under this law. The department may terminate any contract if the awardee or any of its officers, directors, partners, 5% or greater shareholders, principals, or other employee or person substantially involved in its activities are indicted or convicted under any state or federal law for certain criminal offenses, including any offense possibly indicating a lack of business integrity. Additionally, DSNY has the broad authority to require any awardee to enter into a monitorship agreement with an independent monitor at any time DSNY deems necessary. The department has exercised this authority over two awardees, Cogent Waste Solutions and New York Recycling Solutions, which is a joint venture in which Cogent has a 50% stake, after learning that in December of 2023, following a year-long audit, the Business Integrity Commission filed a notice of violation against Cogent with a record high number of counts in the thousands regarding administrative issues. DSNY selected the monitor, former Assistant U.S. Attorney and former NYPD Deputy Commissioner of Internal Affairs, Walter Mack, of Dorr, Rick, Cayley, and Mack, and Cogent and NYRS will bear the full costs. The monitor has the authority to investigate the activities of Cogent and NYRS with respect to their compliance with applicable federal, state, and local laws, rules, regulations, including those related to safety, and his duties will begin 4 months prior to the earliest zone implementation date for Cogent or NYRS. DSNY will take similar steps towards other awardees if and when warranted. In keeping with the multiple goals of the law, we are improving safety while also increasing the environmental sustainability of this industry. Ending the old routing structure in which a carter, and therefore a truck, could serve businesses miles apart in different boroughs in a single night will lead to a 50% reduction in vehicle miles traveled. That's 12 million fewer miles of diesel vehicles traversing our streets. And there's a substantial sustainability angle for the businesses served by CWZ awardees. Making good on a promise from when this program was created, businesses will pay less for the collection of recyclables and compostable material than they do for trash. A citywide average of 32% less for recycling and 18% less for compostable material. That means businesses will have a meaningful financial incentive to separate their waste properly. On that topic, I would like to take the opportunity, as I have at two previous hearings, to again raise the issue of commercial organics separation. Local Law 146 of 2013 requires certain commercial establishments to separate their compostable material, but this law is now substantially out of step with the city's commitment to diversion of compostable waste. While the commercial waste zone system will improve commercial diversion, we also urge the council to consider an update that would allow DSNY to require source separation at all commercial establishments in line with the progress made in residential diversion. If helpful, I have a proposal for new legislation right here in my hand. And one last point on the issue of compostable material. The rules promulgated by DSNY on the implementation of commercial waste zones specifically allow an account for micro-haulers of organic waste. These sustainable small businesses are not a part of why the commercial carting industry needed this reform, and it is not this department's intention to put them out of business. Rather, they will be given the freedom to continue to operate largely as they have, cycling around the city and putting compostable material to beneficial use. So DSNY has taken steps to drastically improve safety and sustainability in the industry, but we were tasked with doing so without bringing about massive price increases that would harm our small businesses, as has occurred in other cities that have attempted similar reforms. This was extremely important to me. None of these reforms will work if the cost of waste service starts forcing small businesses to shutter. I am very proud to share that through very thoughtful and careful contracting, we have improved the quality of service provided while keeping costs down. In 18 out of the 20 commercial waste zones, there is at least one awardee whose maximum pricing is lower than the current BIC rate cap. And in the two outliers, the amount above the cap is in the low single digits, as opposed to the exponential growth that some feared. And just like with the BIC rate cap, these maximum prices are a ceiling, not a floor. Businesses are encouraged to negotiate with the carters in their zone for even lower pricing. To help with those negotiations, we have developed a very intuitive and easy-to-use pricing calculator where businesses can put in precisely how much and what type of collection they need and see the pricing for all of the awardees in their zone. The tool is available at nyc.gov/commercial waste. Substantial on-the-ground outreach around these changes is about to begin in earnest. A mailer to businesses in the first zone will go to print this Wednesday, and starting on July 1st, DSNY will be blanketing the entire zone with door-to-door outreach. Both of these efforts are taking place on a timeline set forth in the law. Canvassing will be overseen by DSNY staff, but largely conducted by an MWBE vendor, Metropolitan Strategies and Solutions. We also plan to work closely with the NYPD Community Affairs Unit to expand the outreach of this effort. But quality of the outreach is every bit as important as quantity. Queens Central is perhaps the most linguistic and culturally diverse place on earth, and our outreach plans reflect that. In addition to the local law 30 languages, our outreach materials are being translated into languages spoken within the zone, including Tibetan, Thai, Nepali, Yiddish, Italian, Hindi, Greek, and Albanian. And lest you think that outreach is waiting until later in the summer, info sessions are already underway. The DSNY outreach team is leading discussions with the members of trade associations that represent large numbers of businesses, the New York City Hospitality Alliance, the Retail Council of New York State, the Hotel Association of New York City, and many others. This work will continue. The goal is to reach absolutely every business in the zone multiple times, informing them of their new rights under this program, the tools available to them, and the requirement that they sign a new contract with a CWZ awardee between September 3rd, 2024 and January 2nd, 2025 in the case of the Queens Central Zone. As that period gets underway, the content of outreach will change from explaining the program to ensuring that businesses understand what will happen if they do not register a new contract, namely that a carter will be assigned to their business by DSNY. Mr. Chair and members of this committee, you all know that the New York City is in the midst of a trash revolution. You see the containers, you see the compost bins. This work to reform the commercial carting industry and to do it right is something many New Yorkers may never actually see directly with their own eyes, but it is vital. It means cleaner air, cleaner streets, and a cleaner way of doing business for every commercial property in our city. While we have covered significant ground today, there is still more information about this program for carters, businesses, and residents available at nyc.gov/commercial waste. I will now turn to the bills on today's agenda. Intro 352, sponsored by Councilmember Nurse, would require the department to create a commercial waste zones working group with up to 20 members, at least 8 of whom will be representatives of the carting industry. Given that proposed makeup, I cannot support this bill in its current form. The inclusion of some but not all awardees or their designees in the working group would present legitimate concerns about favoritism and access in making policy decisions about the ongoing implementation of this program. And as discussed earlier in this testimony, the CWZ Safety Task Force is planning to meet this month. This will allow for discussion of all critical safety-related issues, making this additional working group unnecessary as proposed. Intro 696, also sponsored by Councilmember Nurse, would require DSNY to establish at least one organic waste composting facility that can accept source-separated organic waste in each borough on a specific schedule between 2026 and 2027. While I strongly support the goal of waste equity, there are several issues with the specifics of this bill that make it infeasible. Let's begin with the size. The bill as written says that each of the facilities, each of the 5, must be able to process 360 million pounds of source-separated organic material per year. This is about 3 times the size of our massive Staten Island compost facility. At 33 acres, the Staten Island compost facility is slightly larger than Ellis Island. The requirements of this bill would require about 3 times as much space as that, so more than 3 Ellis Islands, 90 acres in each borough. It is approximately 240 times the size of the Earth Matter facility on Governor's Island or the big reuse facility in Long Island City. And again, that's a per borough requirement, so we'd be talking about building over 1,000 facilities the size of a current community composting processing operation across the city. Then there's the cost. Extrapolating from the previous plans to build a composting facility at DSNY's Greenpoint warehouse, hitting the requirements of this bill would have capital costs in the billions of dollars. That cost is not accounted for in the bill. Then there's the timeline, which, as mentioned, is specifically spelled out in the bill. The timeline provided does not account for the fact that this kind of development would absolutely require an environmental impact study, ULURP, and state DEC permitting. Finally, there's the fact that this bill specifies composting at these sites rather than leaving the flexibility of other forms of beneficial use. We need to accept that the goal is getting this waste out of landfills. New York City already produces more compost than we can give away, and reducing our need for fracked gas by producing renewable energy from food waste is also a noble goal and a substantial win for the environment. I would also like to remind the Council that DSNY does currently have an RFP actively underway to expand the diversity, our processing of compostable material. We share the same goals around waste equity and beneficial use, but cannot support this bill due to the cost, the timeline, and the constraints of the physical environment of the 5 boroughs. The final bill on the agenda today, pre-considered T 2024-2064, seeks to prevent an issue where mergers and acquisitions may reduce competition in a particular commercial waste zone. I would welcome conversations with the sponsor, Chair Abreu, about the possibility of how such a situation might be best addressed. While I do not support it as written, I would like the opportunity for my team to work with your staff on a few drafting issues so that if passed, the law will match the spirit and the intent with which the bill was introduced. I look forward to taking your questions on these bills and any other topics related to commercial waste. Thank you for your time.
How do you put? Good morning, Chair Abreu. I'm sorry, I got tongue-tied. Good morning, Chair Abreu and members of the City Council Committee on Sanitation and Solid Waste Management. My name is Liz Crotty. I'm Commissioner and Chair of the New York City Business Integrity Commission, commonly known as BIC. With me is Nicole Mathias, Director of Policy. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today alongside Commissioner Tisch and my colleagues from the Department of Sanitation. The Business Integrity Commission is the regulator of commercial waste, otherwise known as the trade waste industry and the wholesale public food markets in New York City. BIC's focus is ensuring that these industries operate fairly, safely, and without corruption while protecting customers. This morning, I would like to provide the committee with a brief overview of BIC's current work, our role in relations to commercial waste zones, and our ongoing efforts related to safety as a member of the Vision Zero Task Force. BIC reviews, license, and regulates about 1,900 companies that haul various types of trade waste. Altogether, these companies have about 6,800 commercial vehicles. The commercial waste zone awardees represent a subset of the BIC licensees that haul refuse and recyclables from commercial establishments here in New York City. Commercial waste zones does not impact other BIC licensees and registrants that haul construction demolition debris, certain types of waste exempt from the commercial waste zone program, such as cooking grease, medical waste, perform on-junk removal services, or businesses that have a self-hauler registration with BIC to perform their own waste removal. As Commissioner and Chair of the Business Integrity Commission, I chair the board that consists of Commissioners of Department of Sanitation, Department of Investigation, Small Business Services, Department of Consumer Affairs, Worker Protection, and the NYPD. As Commissioner, I am in charge of the organization of BIC. However, when it comes to final decisions as Chair, BIC cannot deny a license or registration application without a majority vote of the Commission's entire membership. BIC and DSNY have a long-standing partnership, and BIC has been involved in the planning of commercial waste zones since the early stages, dating back to the prior administration. The agencies serve two distinct but complementary purposes, with DSNY running the commercial waste zone program and with BIC continuing to make character determinations for commercial waste zone participants to investigate, license, and regulate non-commercial waste zone carters. Carters who participate in commercial waste zones will continue to have to apply for the renewal of their license every 2 years, and BIC will continue to conduct thorough background investigations with regard to renewal applications. Under commercial waste zones, BIC will have co-enforcement authority with Department of Sanitation, building on the existing collaboration between our enforcement teams who already conduct joint operations. Fostering these interagency partnerships is key to BIC's success and increases our capacity to regulate effectively. In addition to working with Department of Sanitation, BIC also regularly engages in joint enforcement operations with New York State Department of Transportation, New York City Department of Transportation, the NYPD Transportation Division, and the MTA Bridges and Tunnels Division. This fiscal year to date, nearly 50% of BIC violations issued to regulated trade waste companies have been related to vehicle and traffic safety and will continue to be one of our top priorities. As a Vision Zero task force member since 2016, BIC is involved in numerous interagency safety efforts, and we have a strong partnership with the NYPD Collision Investigation Squad, commonly known as CIS, who investigate all fatal crashes. The BIC investigation unit averages more than 250 truck and garage inspections every month. In fiscal year 2024, so far we have removed more than 40 unsafe vehicles from the road and issued hundreds of administrative violations for safety infractions like failure to have a convex mirror for increased driver visibility, failure to produce required vehicle inspection reports, operation of a vehicle deemed to be unsafe, exhibiting a pattern of unsafe driving practices, and failure to install side guards. For example, per local law 108 of 21, side guards, which have been attached to many of the types of trucks we regulate, thanks to a combination of enforcement and persistent outreach efforts, for example, BIC has achieved 95% compliance rate so far with the side guard requirement for the industry. BIC closely tracks safety and enforcement data and uses this information for targeted outreach to prioritize safety operations in the most high-risk areas. Since becoming Commissioner and Chair of the Business Integrity Commission, I have made sure that our work has been guided by the core objectives of the Adams administration of good government, safe streets, and responsiveness to the public. I look forward to continuing this important work and discussing our shared goals today. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize the council members present with us today. We have council members Ung, Nurse, Gennaro, and Carr, and I've already recognized council member Menon. Just want to start by saying this is going to be a long hearing because we have a breadth of questions. So just brace yourselves if you have to go on a break. Not referring to the panel, but folks in the audience, take breaks as needed because it's going to be a long one. I'll start off with my first question, and this is for Department of Sanitation. Local Law 199 of 2019 requires DSNY to periodically publish reports on its implementation of the law. This report was due to the council on September 30 of last year, and the DSNY received notice that it was late in submitting it. Commissioner, can you please provide an update on the implementation of Local Law 199 and the date by which we can expect your full report?
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. As you know, I'm very respectful and always make best efforts to get any reports due to council in quality products and on time. The reason that you don't have this one is that the annual report that's contemplated by the law requires us to report on things that we don't have because the program hasn't started. So things like the cost and volume of solid waste and recyclables collection and disposal, feedback from commercial establishments, the number and types of complaints received regarding commercial waste removal, outreach and education conducted, the number of vehicle miles traveled. Those are all things that we wouldn't have before the program begins. As you know, customers in the first zone can start signing up in September. They all have to be signed up by January 2nd. So I think that I'd like to get a reasonable amount of data before I provide the first report, but I'd like to work with you if you don't want us to wait a full year, or maybe 6 months, on what you think an appropriate runtime would be to collect that type of data and make it meaningful for council.
Yeah, to the extent that it's difficult to get that data, you could always do a partial report as well and say, pending when
Yeah.
you get this other information as well.
It's not that it's difficult to get the data. The data doesn't exist yet because the program hasn't started. But I would like to work with, once the program starts, we will get all of that data. And so I'd like to work with you and your office on when you think a reasonable time might be after the program begins in earnest to get a meaningful report to you.
All right. Thank you for that. According to the timeline laid out in the RFP, DSNY intended to finalize and register agreements with the selected Carters in the summer of 2022, yet the selections were not finalized and announced until January 2024. Can you speak to the reasons for this delay?
Well, I can speak to what happened when I started 2 years ago and what I found and what we've done. This was a program that required us to make 65 awards. As I said in my testimony, to register a single contract in New York can routinely take a year. So I don't think that the initial timeline that was promised to the council was reasonable or thoughtful. What I can say is, since I have taken over, a very strong team of dedicated public servants has been heads down, churning through all of this and doing so quite thoughtfully. Each submission that we had to review from the dozens and dozens of Carters that proposed was thousands of pages. You don't want us to breeze through their technical plans, their sustainability plans. We made these awards quite thoughtfully. We've also built out a number of very important tech platforms, which will make our regulation of this industry quite meaningful. Among them, a telematics platform, which for the first time will give this city, and I imagine many of these companies, access to real-time information about where their trucks are, how fast they're going, whether they make short stops. And so there was a lot to overhauling the way a $1 billion-plus industry works in New York City. And I submit that this team here at the Department of Sanitation has done it quite thoughtfully and quite aggressively, and we are not going to let up.
So would you say that the delay was due to the complications of applications, the technicalities, perhaps being under-resourced in terms of personnel to review the applications?
No, the way, first of all, I reject the term delay, but we can discuss that offline. I don't think this council was given a reasonable estimate of when this program, what it would take for this program to go live in the last administration. It was never reasonable. And this is not about resourcing either. So the way procurements work in the city, according to the PPB rules, which we've followed largely for this procurement to make sure that it's airtight and that it doesn't get undermined in court, there is a vendor selection committee, which we selected, a diverse group of people with different backgrounds, different types of experiences to bring to it. That committee, every single person on the committee had to read and score every single part of every single response, not just of the awardees, obviously, of the dozens and dozens of several thousand-page submissions. If we'd had more people, it wouldn't have made it faster, because those, let's say, 9 people, I maybe have the number wrong, but those 9 people had to do the work themselves and had to do the scores. We took the opportunity in the meantime, while that thoughtful review was ongoing, to build out things that hadn't been built out, like, for example, the backbone for the rate calculator, the backbone for the telematic system. So we didn't waste time on the other programmatic things that were required while this review was underway.
Thank you, Commissioner. Local Law 199 of 2019 requires DSNY in implementing the commercial zones framework to consider 14 distinct factors when awarding contracts to commercial carding companies. This is a statutory requirement. As outlined in the RFP, the city goals and objectives for the program include, among other things, zero waste, environmental benefits, customer service, health and safety, disposal, infrastructure, the modernization of fleets, as well as pricing. How did the agency balance and quantify the 14 factors listed in Local Law 199? And how were these various elements listed in the RFP prioritized during review of proposals?
So as I mentioned, we had a vendor selection team, and they each read all of the submissions and addenda and plans. And there were the 14 categories that you referenced, the 14 objectives of the bill, were each included in one of the 3 high-level categories. So there was operations and capacity, which was 25% of the overall score. That included a proposer's experience, their compliance history, their financial and business information, their capacity and services. The second piece was 35%. That was the technical plans. So you had the subcontracting plan in there, the customer transition plan, the education and outreach plan, the customer service plan, the zero waste plan, the waste management plan, the health and safety plan, and the air pollution reduction plan. The third big factor was pricing, and that was 40%. I want to make sure that it's clear that our reviewers didn't see the pricing until after the scores on the first 2, on the other 60% were already submitted. And we used a pricing calculator tool that we developed to factor in pricing.
So is it fair to say that pricing was the biggest percentage
Yes.
point in terms of weighting these factors?
Pricing was 40%.
Would you, so this is your rubric, right? You had operations and capacity at 25%?
Yep.
And what'd you say was at 35%?
Technical plan.
Technical plan. And pricing at 40%. Where was safety, one of the biggest reasons we did commercial waste zones in the first place, right, was to make sure that safety was paramount.
Yep.
And we'll get into that shortly, but where was that factor as part of your rubric?
Safety was actually across multiple categories of the RFP selection. So within operations and capacity, that first 25%, one of the factors was their compliance history. So that includes the record of CDL violations, such as summonses, tickets, and complaints. Their safety history, including driving infractions, collisions, injuries, fatalities, et cetera. Then, in the technical plans, safety is factored in under the health and safety plan, where each proposer had to include the details of their fleet alignment with CWZ safety standards and an overview of the health and safety procedures. So I would say that safety was represented between categories 1, which was 25%, and 2, which was 35%. It represented a piece of both of those.
Can you please speak to how the vending committee members were selected and whether or not they were subject to the conflict of interest standards to make sure there was no conflict with business before the city?
Yes, I don't have my ACO here, and I apologize for that. Bob, do you want to take that, or should we get back to them with the background checks? We're going to get back to you on it, but yeah, we'll get back to you on the checks done on each of the
Okay.
people.
We'll certainly follow up. We heard from a lot of applicants that there was a lot of confusion in general about how to calculate cost. Can you speak to the kind of feedback, guidance, or chances for revisions that DSNY gave applicants during this process?
Sure. Bob, do you want to talk about the extensions that were given as they predated me?
Yes, we worked with the 34 different awardees, made submissions for the final Part 2 of the commercial waste zone proposal. The department carefully reviewed each of the submissions and worked with Carter's if there was additional information that was required.
And if a specific Carter or application had any confusion, was there opportunities for revision with respect to cost, given how highly weighted it was?
Yeah, we had general discussions. What I can say is that all 34 awardees who submitted proposals to Part 2 of the commercial waste zone proposal were deemed responsive to our procurement.
And, sorry, I would add that everyone got a second go at it because we did engage in what is a best practice of procurement in New York City contracting, which is a best and final offer process. So everyone made their initial submissions, and then sometime later, we're able to put in a second as part of that best and final offer, or BAFO process. So it's 2 shots at it.
My next question is, given how, from a policy standpoint, these 14 distinct factors, the law didn't specifically ask for one factor to be weighted more heavily than the other. Why the 40% for pricing?
40% was for pricing because there was real concern that when you take competition, a lot of competition out of a market, and you reduce the number of competitors in each zone to 3, that prices could go up for our small businesses and impact our small businesses. If our small businesses in New York City were put out of business or couldn't afford the cost of waste hauling, then all of the other benefits of the program, the safety, the sustainability, they go out the window. So for me, pricing was very important because it was the key to getting all of the other benefits intended by the law.
If you had pursued a lower percentage for pricing, do you think that would have come at the expense of environmental considerations, labor considerations, or safety considerations? I guess I'm trying to figure out why couldn't it have been like 30 or 20% versus the 40%? How do you arrive at the 40%?
It could have been, and it was definitely an art, not a science. But as I said to you, there were 2 existential things that we worried about. And when I say existential, I mean, if those things went wrong, then the whole program would be paused or delayed or not move forward. Those 2 things were, 1, opening the procurement up to legal challenge, and 2, having the pricing be so high that it put our small businesses in New York City out of business. If either of those 2 things happened, then the other 13 things that we wanted out of commercial waste zones, we would not get the benefit of because it undermines the entire program. So you may disagree with the weight that I decided to put on pricing, but my rationale for doing it was we could not put additional burdens on small businesses in a way that would jeopardize the other intent of the law. And I think, I'm happy to say, I feel really good about it because I think we succeeded on the pricing. As I mentioned in my testimony, in 18 out of the 20 zones, prices decreased for small businesses.
Since we're there now, I know that 2 of the zones that were above the rate cap are actually in my district,
Yep.
Washington Heights and the West Bronx. Why were they subjected to those increases? I know you say it's only in the single digits. How much in the single digits? And again, why are they being subjected to that price cap compared to other neighborhoods?
So the reason why they are subject to it is, for them, the 40% pricing wasn't high enough to overcome how well the top bidders did on the other categories. And that's why I say that coming up with the percentages of how much each thing was going to be weighted is an art and not a science. So I have here the two zones where the maximum rates increased. It was 5% in Bronx West and 2% in Upper Manhattan. I do want to say this, though. Like the current BIC rate cap, these are maximum allowed rates, and businesses may continue their practice of negotiating for lower rates as carters compete against one another within their award zone. But I think had we not put price at 40%, it wouldn't have been just two zones in the city where maximum prices went up. It would have been citywide.
Is there a world where those two zones can see rates go down relative to the other zones?
Not contractually. However, as I mentioned, businesses in each of the zones may negotiate with carters for better rates. And this is a standard practice today. So I don't want to give the impression that this necessarily means that businesses in those two zones will all be paying the highest prices in the city for carting of their waste. It does mean that the three awardees in those zones each had a maximum price above the current BIC rate cap before it's adjusted.
With respect to safety records, one of the main goals of this legislation was to weed out bad actors and ensure compliance with labor laws and safety and environmental regulations. However, some of the carters selected have histories of labor violations, unsafe driving, mismanaged facilities, etc., while some companies with cleaner records were not selected. How do you account for this?
Well, as you mentioned in your testimony, there were 14 different goals of this legislation. So when we administered the RFP, we accounted for and scored for each of the 14 goals. And when you're trying to balance so many benefits, there is not, it's not as clean or straightforward as when you're trying to do it for like two goals, for example. If safety was one of two things that this council was looking to get out of this program and on which we were going to score, you may have seen very different results. But at the end of the day, the council required us to score based on 14 different factors. And we had a objective group of many city employees do the scoring, and that's how it came out.
If you have Group A, let me just actually go into examples. Could you please provide the following data with regards to each awardee? And perhaps BIC could help here if not, if DSNY doesn't have this information. Could you please provide the following data with regard to each awardee? The number of notice of violations issued, how many accidents and collisions reported, sum of fines outstanding, and sum of fines paid?
So BIC will have to do that, as we have not yet started to regulate this industry. Our regulation starts when the first zone goes on. So Commissioner Crotty can provide that information for you.
Yes, in the year, for the fiscal year to date, we have had 200 violations. 37% have been in quality of life, which includes dirty vehicle container, overload truck, and load not secure. 25% have been in safety, which is the convex mirror, daily vehicle inspection reports, and the third is 24% have been in commingling. So that's for year to date. I do have from 2022 to 2024, the number is 308 collective NOVs. I don't have them broken down in percentages as I do for the fiscal year to date, but we've collected over $800,000 in fines, and the crashes have been 24 to, they've been trending down for the year.
Cogent Waste Solutions was awarded four zone contracts, 3 of which cover a substantial part of Brooklyn. BIC has alleged that Cogent has overcharged customers, falsified business records, and failed to provide employment disclosures. The company faces nearly $50 million in fines. Cogent is also under investigation for a fatal accident which occurred in January this year, during which a Cogent driver allegedly made a U-turn, then hit and killed a driver in South Brooklyn. Claims against Cogent contain the highest number of separate counts of any of the violations listed in BIC's public database. What is the communication with BIC? Why was Cogent picked? First, is my first question. Second, given its history of these violations and that other Carters with cleaner records were not selected, what is the main reason that accounts for this?
The main reason that accounts for this is that in the legislation of 2019, the council gave the Department of Sanitation 14 factors on which to evaluate Carters, not just 1 or 2. And we did that evaluation for dozens of responses to our RFP, and the results were what the scores dictated.
If you have a company that does not, if you have a Carter who does not have these violations, shouldn't they be graded higher than those that have those violations?
Absolutely, on the, each of those 14 factors. So for example, just going back, they would likely have done better on number 2, their compliance history. But that is one of 14 factors that you had us evaluate Carters on.
Thank you. What did Cogent promise in its response to the RFP that countered its poor track record?
So as part of the RFP process, one of the things that each Carter had to submit was a health and safety plan. This is one Carter's health and safety plan. They're quite large. Importantly, everything submitted as part of the health and safety plans becomes a provision of our contract, meaning if you submitted it as part of your health and safety plan, we are contractually holding you to it. So I don't have right here the details of Cogent's specific health and safety plan, but I am happy to provide that to you.
I mean, today was the day to have that information. My understanding is that the RFP process has concluded. Is that right?
Yes, the RFP process has concluded, and as I mentioned, I am quite happy to get you Cogent's health and safety plan, as well as the dozens of other health and safety plans submitted by the awardees.
And will we also have access to how they were graded on each of those 14 factors?
Are we able to give the grading? We're going to work with the council to try to provide that information to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. What was the communication like with BIC and DSNY in terms of when it made these awards?
We had a representative from BIC who served on the vendor selection committee. So it was a joint DSNY-BIC committee.
How does DSNY plan to ensure commercial waste services are provided if Cogent were to lose its license or cannot continue to operate, and the cost of paying any penalties because of the cost of the penalties that it will owe?
So we have no indication at this time that Cogent will not continue to be able to operate, but our agreements with each Carter give us the power to assign a new Carter as needed should any Carter in that zone fail to be able to fulfill their responsibilities.
Can you give me an example?
Well, it hasn't happened yet, but as an example, if Cogent was not, wasn't able to participate in a zone, the contracts give DSNY the authority to select a new Carter to come into that zone, so that zone isn't down a Carter.
It is our understanding that Cogent's contract with DSNY includes a monitoring mechanism. I understand Mr. Walter Mack is a partner at the law firm known as Dorr, Reich, Cayley, and Mack. I may have mispronounced that. And my apologies for that. In appointing Mr. Mack as the independent monitor over Cogent, did DSNY receive assurances from his law firm that there is a zero chance of conflict of interest?
I want to say a few things about it. First, we wrote into the contracts the ability for us to assign a monitor to a Carter if needed. And that was quite important to me, because while we have great staff on our commercial waste team, I thought in advance that there were things that might come up that would require an extra level of like day in and day out scrutiny. And so that was a very important addition that we included in each of the contracts that we awarded. We had members of both DSNY, our general counsel, Bob Orlin, our counsel, Ethel Corcoran, as well as members, the general counsel of the Business Integrity Commission, interviewed Mr. Mack. I know that the Business Integrity Commission has done work with Mr. Mack previously, and he has had a number of very relevant assignments in terms of being a monitor for similar type businesses in this industry.
Can you speak to the assignments that would make him a subject matter expert on this?
Sure. Do you want to do that, Bob, or do you want me to do it?
If I may just jump in, they're Dorr, Mack, Reich, and Kylie. They were on a pre-list at BIC, a pre-vetted list, and have served as monitors before in the trade waste industry.
And would you happen to know if he was if we received assurances from his law firm that there's no conflict of interest here, or received any assurances that Mr. Mack himself?
Yes, we did. We spoke to him, and the firm did a conflict of interest check, and there are no conflicts of interest.
Great. All right, moving on to more questions about the monitor. I'm curious to know, what is the monitor going to be looking at? What metrics will the monitor use to make sure that folks like Cogent are actually complying?
Yeah, the monitor, as I mentioned, was assigned really when we were making the awards. We made the assignment back in January. It was as a result of BIC's announcement of a record number of notices of violation against Cogent. I think it was something like 4,900 for administrative things, overcharging, that type of thing. I don't want to speak for BIC, but when we saw that come out, we immediately sent Cogent and another company that Cogent has a 50% stake in a letter saying that we would require that they bring on a monitor. That monitor obviously will look at those administrative issues, but as I mentioned in my testimony, can look at anything in terms of the company's compliance with local, state, federal laws and any regulations, and importantly, any rules that we have promulgated around commercial waste and provisions in their contracts.
Which agency will house the monitor? Is that DSNY?
Yes.
And is there a point at which the monitorship will end?
We have not stated a point at which the monitorship will end, and I don't have a date at this time.
And is Cogent the only Carter that has a monitor subject to it?
No, as I mentioned, we have required that 2 different companies have monitors assigned to them, Cogent and NYRS.
Thank you. I would also like to recognize my other colleagues who are present with me here today, Council members Banks, Vernikov, Palladino, and Schwang. And Palladino, my apologies. Action Carding won commercial waste zone contracts in every zone of the Bronx, Brooklyn, and all but one in Manhattan. Action Carding allegedly killed 5 pedestrians or cyclists from 2008 to 2017, and federal data shows the company has, over the last 2 years, been involved in crashes that injured 18 people in just 2 years. That's an astronomical figure. Given these circumstances, how is it that Action earned itself so many of the CWZ contracts, and why aren't they subject to a monitor?
As I mentioned, there were 14 different factors that we weighted and scored 14 different things that this council and DSNY wanted out of the commercial waste zone program. Safety, of course, is a very important one. And safety was included in our evaluation as part of two of the 3 different categories. But when we put price in, the scores were the scores. I do have a safety plan for Action, as well as obviously for Cogent, as I mentioned, and I'm also happy to provide that health and safety plan to you following this hearing.
All right, I'm going to go into another set of questions before I let my colleagues ask some of their very important questions. With respect to subcontractors, some carters, which are now awardees, have indicated they would perform their contract through subcontractors. Do we know, and if you do have that information, who are the subcontractors who are performing the work in Queens Central?
So what you're referencing is, as part of our agreements, each carter in each zone is allowed to bring on 2 designated carters, so 2 subcontractors to perform collection within the zone. I want to be very clear that those subcontractors are subject to the very same rules that the awardees are subject to, meaning if a subcontractor is operating within a zone, they will not be able on that same route to go across zone lines. But what it means is, in a single zone, instead of having only 3 companies collecting the waste, you may have up to 9. Importantly, also in our agreements, DSNY has the ability and the authority to review and approve of any and all subcontractors. And the carters in many zones have made proposals to us, and we are in the process now of reviewing them.
Do we know who the subcontractors are for Queens Central?
As of now, we have not yet approved any subcontractors, but certainly Queens Central, the subcontractors proposed there, are on the top of our list for review and approval.
When will DSNY make decisions about those?
This month.
This month, okay.
Yep.
You also just said in your testimony that subcontractors will be subject to the same routes, so they can't cross over into other zones?
They can't cross into other zones,
They can't?
correct? They cannot.
Okay, and is that subject to your policy, or is that subject to CWZ law?
I believe it's subject to CWZ law, but it is also written into our contracts.
Okay. And if it isn't, it's something we can explore for legislation, potentially. Does DSNY assess subcontractors based on the same 14 factors as it is required to do with carters who are now awardees?
Bob, do you want to go through the review of the subcontractors?
The subcontractors are not reviewed the same way the awardees are, because the awardees were awarded contracts to collect commercial waste based on the detailed criteria that Commissioner just went through with you, the 14 factors. The primary issue that the subcontractors will be vetted on will be honesty, integrity, good character, and we'll look at their records. But we're not looking at price. It's obviously not relevant. The price is set by the carter, the awardee, and the subcontractor has to charge no higher than what the awardee can charge.
I understand the part about the rate cap is already in the contract between DSNY and the prime, and therefore prices perhaps, not of a legal moment, but with respect to, routing and other issues, what are we doing
Compliance,
there?
I think what you're getting at is, will their compliance history be reviewed as part of the approval process? And the answer is, of course.
And it's also fair to say that the same 14 factors don't necessarily apply to subcontractors
Well,
like they do to.
some automatically apply. So as Bob mentioned, the subcontractor's maximum rate is set by whatever whichever awardee they're subcontracting to, whatever their submission was. Health and safety plans, like those types of things, they apply to the subcontractor.
And is price and safety the only two factors of the 14 that are applied to subcontractors and the others aren't? I'm just trying to get a sense of which factors apply, which don't.
No, it's not just price and safety, and we can get you the full list of what would apply and what wouldn't.
That would be helpful, thank you. How is DSNY assessing the safety and compliance records of subcontractors? And are the subcontractors for Queens Central in the process of conducting worker safety trainings? My guess is that worker safety training hasn't happened because you haven't decided on who the subcontractor will be yet. But we're only a few months away from the first zone, so that brings me some concern that we're not doing
No, it
safety
shouldn't
workers.
bring you concern. The first zone starts on January 2nd.
Okay.
So we are right on schedule where we plan to be.
Okay. And you may have answered this briefly, but can you touch on how DSNY is assessing the safety and compliance records of subcontractors?
As part of our review of subcontractor safety and compliance will be among the factors that we look at.
And are there also considerations for fleet modernization, labor standards, and environmental impact for the subcontractors as well?
Yes.
So one of the selected carters, Recycle Track Systems, is not a carter at all, but a broker. How could a broker which subcontracts to other businesses display compliance with all the requirements for companies selected in the RFP?
The commercial waste zone law and specifically allowed brokers to submit proposals. Recycle Track System has proposed 3 carters that have experience in the industry. The department will carefully vet those 3 carters to make sure they comply with all the requirements in the commercial waste zone law, rules, and the agreement.
Can subcontractors have a contract in more than one zone?
Yes, they can, but as I mentioned, there have to be separate truck routes. So on a single route, you can't, they cannot cross zone lines, but a single subcontractor can work as a subcontractor in multiple zones.
And this is a hypothetical. My next question. Will a subcontractor be permitted to continue providing services in a particular zone if the awardee that the subcontractor works under is for some reason disqualified from providing CWZ services?
So the subcontract is to the awardee, so if the awardee is
gone.
disqualified under
So
the
will the
CWZ
subcontractor.
law, we can appoint a replacement. That replacement may choose to use the same subcontractor or may not.
And it's a hypothetical, but in terms of replacement, what would be the factors considered there?
If we had to replace a carter,
A subcontractor.
a subcontractor,
If for whatever reason, if an awardee loses this contract, that would therefore disqualify the subcontractor. I guess, what factors would go into account in the replacement prime contractor?
Bob, can you speak about what's contemplated?
Yes, our agreements with the carters contemplate looking at their financial ability, their capacity to take on a different zone, their prior operations if the commercial waste zone program had started, their prior compliance history if it hasn't, So we're looking at, and any factor the department thinks is relevant, but we'll be looking, we want to make sure that any carter that is given a new zone has the ability, the trucks, the personnel to do it, and want to make sure that if they've been operating in the commercial waste zone program, the customers have said satisfactory things about them. And service has been proper and good.
All right, and my next set of questions, and then I will turn it over to Councilmember Carr. But before I do that, worker safety was one of the greatest motivators for the passage of Local Law 199 of 2019. And the safety of pedestrians, cyclists, and other drivers is just as important. This is a question for BIC. What is the threshold of revoking a license? I mean, you consider the history of violations that Cogent engaged in, which thereby, in a way, it puts Cogent as part of this universe that DSNY has to consider. What threshold does it take to revoke a license?
Well, in the past 15 years, we've revoked 4 licenses. We've denied 150. So again, we have a renewal process every 2 years. So the mechanism that the agency usually uses is a denial. The listing for the denial is in our code and our rules. Generally, those denials stem from criminal complaints and or lying to the commission under sworn testimony, but it's really on a case-by-case basis.
All right, so let's talk about case-by-case basis. Why not? Why wasn't Cogent's license revoked, given its history of violations?
Well, I mean, that's always the balance you have to have as a regulator to protect the industry and protect the customers, and that's why we have done the investigation and the audit and had an outstanding NOV, which I can't discuss because it is still open. But since it is still open and has not been litigated, I can't comment directly on that.
Is there a threshold for revoking a license? I mean,
again,
if an awardee is involved in 6 fatal accidents in 1 year, I mean, what would happen then?
Well, again, it's a denial more than a revoking. But the thing is that in the companion law to Local Law 199 was 198, which is safety, which sets out lots of the standards that we look at in terms of safety. So after every crash, we respond to every crash with the NYPD collision inspection squad. We then do truck and garage inspections after. We look, and we've since I've become commissioner and chair, we've had 2 people in our agency certified on the motor carrier training safety. So truck safety is something we take very seriously, and we look at it. But those are some of the factors that go into looking at all of these things. Before the 198 of 2019 went into effect in 21, that's when safety really became paramount, and we look over all of those factors after every incident.
Is it fair to say that Cogent has 50 million in fines?
Again, that's an open notice of violation, so I really can't comment on it.
I mean, today's the day for it, right? I mean, this is something that has happened for many years, and again, we're creating a universe of applicants that DSNY is required to consider because BIC did not revoke its license. I mean, I'll frame it in an easier way. What about if there's 3 fatal accidents in 1 year? Then what would happen then?
Well, we would look at each accident. We would consider maybe a safety monitor, look at their safety records. We would audit their safety records. We take these things very seriously, and we would give a full investigation of the company and what it looks like. The reason I can't talk about Cogent specifically today, though, is because it's still an open notice of violation. If it was not still an open notice of violation, I'd be happy to discuss the ins and outs.
Can you speak to the number of violations that have been settled? What number is that?
Yeah, what we did do since getting there, we have bifurcated our violations unit, so now we have a violations unit. We have redone our penalty schedule, so we've increased the penalties. The average penalty now is $2,000 for people, so we really have taken a wholesale look at that and made that much more of a priority in the regulation of the...
Can you speak to how much of of the violations were settled and how many are outstanding?
I'm going to have Nicole Mathias, our Director of Policy, speak to that.
Sure. So since we're an ongoing regulator of these companies, it's not a one-off the way other agencies, you might think of their process. So it's looking at the compliance of the whole company. Now, as the commissioner said, we have this violations unit. So often our goal is to reach a settlement and of course collect whatever fine is appropriate, but working with these companies to get them into compliance, whether that's submitting the records, maybe the violation was for not submitting a record. Maybe if they do submit it, the fine might be a little lower in that case, but it's really about working with these companies over the long term and over that 2-year process. So we don't consider settling of the violation necessarily like a negative outcome.
I've been told that there have been settlements of violations. Is it fair to say that there haven't been any settlements then?
No, there's been lots of settlements of violations.
And why can't we disclose the number of settlements there have been for the number of violations and how many are outstanding? The public is asking, why is it that the Business Integrity Commission has not revoked licenses for operators who have engaged in harmful behavior to the public?
Well, in year to date, we have issued over 1,300 violations. Over 1,000 of those have been settled. So
Is this for Cogent?
This is for
My question
2024
specifically for
year-to-date.
Cogent.
Well, we're in the process of doing that. We did have.
I've been told there
applied-
have been settlements already for certain violations for Cogent. I would like to know what number of violations have been settled.
Well, in 2022, we had an investigation. There was a settlement in January 23 for $500,000. Then we had an audit, which was started based on that, on customer complaints. And now we have an additional violation, which is still an open violation, so which is why I can't talk about it. But this is a company we have put a lens on. They've put us in, they've put themselves in under our lens, and it's something that we take very seriously, and we are working hard. That's part of the balance of being a regulator, is to regulate the activity, to keep them in business, or to keep them, or make the determination that they should not be in business. That's the role of the regulator. That is an ongoing situation. It is still ongoing. It is nothing that we have taken lightly. Again, the 2022 violation of $500,000 was the largest violation to date of the Business Integrity Commission that was settled in January of '23.
And 500,000, was that for one violation? Or how many
well,
of the entire violations that were issued to Cogent?
That was a failure to disclose pertinent information to based on customer complaints. I believe there was 1,000 violations.
So the 500,000 were for 1,000 violations?
Yes.
And what's the outstanding number of violations that have not, that are part of ongoing
Well,
discussions?
that's part of the notice of violation that we have open right now.
What's the total of because I got the $50 million from somewhere. So is it fair to say that it's,
I believe it's 47 million.
okay, so 500,000 was settled, there's another 40-something million to go. Or maybe it doesn't work that way, but
I
you speak to
think
that.
some of the counts, as with criminal counts, they are individual acts, but they are duplicative of certain behaviors. That's why we are in the process of litigating this. But again, this is something we take very seriously, we do not tread lightly, and it's the balance of the regulator.
It's hard for me to come away with this, that BIC is taking this seriously, given the history of violations here. You mentioned in your testimony that there were 4 instances where licenses were revoked. Can you speak to those instances and how they pair with Cogent's situation?
No one has been revoked since I have started. The last revocation, I believe, was before the pandemic in 2019, and 2018 it was salvage. But so I can't, again, the mechanism the commission uses is denials, not revocations.
There seems to be a lot of inactivity at BIC if there's only been a revocation of a license in the past 5 years.
I would counter that. We've had 150 denials over the past 15 years. We are a very active committee and commission that takes safety and trucking very seriously, and we are very active in making it safe.
I'll turn it over to Councilmember Carr for questions.
Chair, could I just add something to that discussion because I would just note, under the commercial waste zone paradigm, while it is the case that we had to review the submissions of any proposer that had an active BIC license, the good news here is that under this program, we at the department can terminate any contract for material breach. And if there were a number of fatalities where the driver or the company was found to be at fault, that would absolutely constitute a material breach of the awardee's contract, and we would terminate the contract.
I understand that you have within the contract remedies in place to terminate, but we should be looking in the first instance, why are we giving licenses in the first place to folks or not denying licenses to folks who are engaging in this pretty reckless behavior. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Carr for his set of questions.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, good to see you both. A pleasure as always. I want to focus a little bit on the Staten Island zone, as you might expect. You know, we had 3 awardees in that zone, only one of which, Green Environmental, is a Staten Island-based company. The other 2 Carters are not borough-based in that zone, and one of which is Cogent, which we've been talking about a lot at this hearing. And so I'm just wondering, is there a willingness on the part of the agency and a legal capacity, as you understand it, under the local law, to reconsider reopening the RFPs on a zone-by-zone basis?
No, there's not. That is my understanding. However, I mentioned this before you got here. The contracts that we have awarded give each awardee the ability to bring on 2 subcontractors to operate within their zone. So each of the 3 Staten Island awardees can bring on 2 additional carters, and perhaps those will be more local carters. So instead of 3 carters operating in each zone, it will really be 9, but the subcontractors will be held to the same terms and conditions of the award.
And that's something that's brought to you by the original awardees, right? They would have to initiate the agreement with the potential sub and then bring to you for approval?
That is correct.
So is that something they could do on a rolling basis based on their...
That is correct. They cannot exceed 2, but they could replace one. For example, if they had 2 and they wanted to replace one, they could do that subject to our approval.
And I think you mentioned earlier that, you know, you're maybe about a month away from the approval of some subcontractors. Could you let us know what the state is of that you know, as it pertains to the Staten Island franchise area?
Yes, we're starting, as I mentioned, with Queens Central, which will be the first zone to go online, but absolutely, as the Staten Island stuff begins, I'm happy to let you know timeline.
Yeah, that'd be appreciated, because I think we have, you know, local businesses who used to do this work at one point, and now, from their perspective, they're out of the game, and if they have an opportunity to at least be considered, then I think that there's a way for people to be partners in this enterprise.
And I encourage those local businesses to work with Cogent, Green, and Priority to develop subcontract agreements.
Okay, and based on, you know, some of the questions that the chair was alluding to and some of the issues with, in particular, to Cogent, do you have concerns about their ability to meet the terms of the contract at this point in time?
I can tell you, if they don't meet the terms of their contract, I will terminate their contract quite quickly. And that doesn't just go for Cogent. That goes for any Carter. I have been, and Frank, who runs our Bureau of Commercial Waste, has been very clear with all of these Carters that this is there is a new sheriff in town, and we take our new responsibility to regulate the commercial waste industry and the commercial waste zone participants quite seriously.
Okay, well, I appreciate your answers, and just in closing, I'll just say, I think that this is an opportunity to make sure that you have the flexibility you need under this local law as it comes into operation. And I know that everyone on this dais is willing to be partners in helping you make it work as best as possible.
Thank you, as always.
Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Nurse.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have too many lines of questions about the zones. I'll ask some questions about my bill, but I just want to say that I do recall we had a briefing about the zones, and I think the borough president was there, and we asked, is this constellation of awardees one that we could stand behind and feel like this is solid? And you said yes. And so to see this come out of that process with Cogent and the need for a monitor kind of is a little bit of a blow to that statement. However, I'm very glad to hear you say that you will confidently terminate anyone that is not meeting the terms of the contract, is not compliant with safety standards, and that you are exercising the monitor to hold people accountable. There were good players who didn't make it, who had better records, and unfortunately we see folks who don't have great records here. So we need to make sure that they are held accountable and change actions or get them out of there, because we don't want to undermine the whole intention of this bill. So I won't go more into that. I do want to just clarify our infrastructure bill. So we actually thought of this bill with a lot of stakeholders very early on in our term, because we knew that the curbside collections program would be coming. Collections is hugely important. We want to have a redundancy of ways that people can actually do that. Let's integrate it more seamlessly into everyday life. But the processing piece was always going to be a piece that we needed to also consider. Anaerobic digestion is going to play a large role, but it can't play the only role. It's extremely expensive. It takes a long time to build more of these facilities. The pre-processing, the slurry making is also extremely expensive, and we have to build that out. We are decades out from any of that happening, as far as I know. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. So we want to build resiliency in our waste system with lower cost facilities and more complex systems that are still being worked out. The pilot at Greenpoint is still being worked out. It works sometimes, it doesn't work sometimes, at an additional cost. I know you can't speak for DEP, but it is a system that you're relying on for where this material is going. So I just want to clarify that our bill says that, as it's written, it will be no less than one facility in each borough. So that doesn't preclude from looking at what you have, which is not as robust as where we would like to go. But it doesn't preclude you from looking at what is registered, permitted, or a community composter size facility. We want to incorporate small, medium, and large. So that's one. To the costs, you talked about costs, but as I mentioned, to use the anaerobic digestion is also going to be a significant cost, because you have to do the pre-processing, the slurry making. That is a huge cost. I mean, I would love to hear the plans for growing that. And additionally, we talked about cumulative annual processing capacity. So again, we're looking at not just one site that's like 5 times the size of whatever you mentioned in your testimony, but across the borough, each one. So the question I did have is, you mentioned you have a RFP out to actively look to expand and diversify our processing of compostable material. Could you talk on the record what the scope of that looks like and what of that is localized, if anything, within the city?
Yes, we have an ongoing procurement that I would like and expect to see finalized before the next 3 boroughs come online in the fall. The procurement is intended to diversify both the type of beneficial use we have, between composting and anaerobic digestion, perhaps to make, my hope is that it will make the balance more even than it currently is. but also where that material goes so that we don't overburden one community with these trucks hauling organics. And so that is it's a bid process that is underway right now.
And so is any of that going to be localized with here in the city, or are you looking at regional or further upstate?
This is going to be a wholly unsatisfying answer to you, but I don't know because it's still on. I don't know at this time because it's still ongoing, but I do know your interest and concern about this. So as soon as that is finalized and clear, we will definitely reach out to you and let you know.
Okay. What do you think would be the appropriate tonnage capacity that is processed locally in the city?
I don't want to say what an appropriate tonnage capacity is, but what I will say is we just made an enormous investment in increasing the processing capacity of our Staten Island compost facility. I think for food waste it's something by like 20 times. And I think that the model that we have with our recycling is unbelievable in New York City. It's like largely closed loop. Because the recycling that we collect from New York City homes largely is like processed in and goes back into New York City. Obviously, that would be the ideal if we could just design it, no cost or anything involved. So I don't have a specific percentage other than to say that I share with you that it would be very nice to be able to do a lot of the processing in New York City, and that the Adams administration has really made significant investments to be able to do more processing within New York City.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think the expansion of the Staten Island facility is wonderful, and it's welcome news, and I think that type of model is something that we'd like to see replicated where applicable and appropriate.
Yes.
And so I'd love to sit down and talk with you about what that looks like, because I think it is important, not that we're just separate. We agree, the goal is to separate the food waste out of and organic waste out of the waste stream, but we also want to make sure that we are using processing the material in the way that's most ecologically beneficial and that reduces harm as it's distributed. And I think compost itself has shown that, and not just from the perspective of the true believers, as you all like to categorize the advocates, but it is something that people use here in the city. We've also raised with you the idea of helping some of these facilities generate revenue through the sale of this product, not just giving it away, but actually selling it. As well as looking into the legality or trying to consider allowing some of these medium-sized facilities to actually charge for a commercial truck to tip. So we can build in some revenue so that it's not all on the city to cover the costs. And I'd love to revisit that conversation with you at some point.
Councilmember Nurse, I would also add that as to that ongoing procurement, we put the bid out. We can't control who responds to the bid. So to the extent that there were companies or organizations that responded to the bid that intend to process within New York City, of course, they will be considered among the bid. But if none did respond, we can't manufacture that. Mm-hmm. We can only work with the bids that we receive.
Are you saying that none have applied?
I don't know, but I'm just making the point that we can only pick from the companies or the organizations that have submitted bids.
Thank you for that. Chair, just one last question. I'm so sorry. You had also mentioned, we wanted to revisit the conversation around a commercial waste zone working group to bring together a coalition of partners to have just a guaranteed place to talk through unanticipated outcomes that come through this unprecedented change in the system. I saw in your testimony that you said, you have the safety task force working group, but and I'd love to hear from your perspective, as things come up that are not just related to safety, do you think that would be appropriate space to discuss other things that come up, such as environmental concerns, the general costs and the impacts of businesses, some of the challenges that carters may face?
I think we can see what comes up, but what I would say is I don't want to put in place a committee that gives some carters special access or ability to sway policy over others. This is a reasonable number of awardees that will now be the primes operating in the commercial carding business. And when I say reasonable number, it means that the Bureau of Commercial Waste at DSNY will be working with each of those awardees regularly, like on a first name basis. I am not worried about the one-to-one dialogue. However, it may be that it could come up that there are topics or issues that we want to have, larger group conversations on. And for those, Frank Marshall, who is our Assistant Commissioner of Commercial Waste, would call a meeting of all of the carters. And he has already done that a few times where they've had group discussions when we wanted to remind them that we were incredibly serious about our regulatory authority. And I anticipate that that will continue to happen. In my opinion, that is a better way of doing it than having a committee or a working group that gives certain carters more access than others.
So are you saying that when the Assistant Commissioner calls those meetings that you're bringing all the carters to the table, or are you bringing some and not others?
My point was, Frank can have one-on-one meetings with carters.
Absolutely.
And he can call group meetings of all of the carters. He has done both already. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, that is a better way to proceed than having a standing committee that gives certain carters more access than others.
Right. And just to clarify also, the working group wouldn't just have carters. I think there's a way to get around that perception of favoritism at a practical level. But this is also environmental justice advocates, other people who were involved in pushing this legislation over the finish line and really shaping it. So when you're having those conversations with just carters, that, to bring others into the conversation for that transparency and troubleshooting, collaboration, I think it would be really important, regardless of what you feel about this bill, to make sure that that is a practice that comes into play, especially over the next 2 years.
That point is very well taken and appreciated. And regardless of where this specific bill goes, we will incorporate that feedback into our go-forward operating plans.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I'll turn it over to our Brooklyn Borough President, the original author of the Commercial Waste Zones Bill, a champion for worker rights, a champion for our environment. And looking forward to hearing your statement and also giving you the opportunity to ask questions as well.
First, I just want to thank you, Chair, for taking the time to have this hearing, as it is deeply important, obviously, to me, but I think for this city. And your questions were amazing, and I'm so glad that you've continued to champion and speak to this being a worker safety and environmental justice legislation, which is exactly what it was. And after hearing testimony from DSNY today, it seems to have been a price reduction legislation more so than a worker safety legislation and an environmental justice one. And I always say justice is not free. If we want to stop the water from flooding Manhattan, we're gonna have to pay for a wall. That is gonna cost something. It's not gonna be free, but we need to do it in order to protect our futures. And it doesn't seem to be at the top of the agenda here for this administration. As I was getting here, I just can't tell you how less frustrated and more sad over what I was hearing from DSNY today. I want to be very clear that Cogent was the poster boy as to why this legislation even needed to happen in the first place. The way they took care of their workers, or did not take care of their workers, the trucks being out of date and dangerous, the deaths that were being caused by the reckless driving, more due to the contracts and the routes that were set forth by Cogent and not the drivers, the complete disregard for local community, where for decades the community was asking them to assist them with new gates, smell reduction or odor reduction work, and they just ignored them constantly, and that we would put this legislation forward specifically to address Cogent and that they would get a contract is beyond me. I just can't tell you how it undermines the work that we're trying to do. And for DSNY to allow for a contract to go forward to them just speaks to how little they care about what the core of the legislation was, which is the other 13 things outside of pricing that was important, and how much they cared about pricing. Which I also want to say, I would love to get that information, because we're making the assumption here that the reason Cogent was successful was solely because of pricing. Would love to get the grading system so that we could see how low they proposed their costs to DSNY that made it so that another Carter, maybe the next one in place, was so much more expensive than Cogent that we couldn't choose them. So the frustration that I have is very high. I also want to say that I resent the idea that we weren't thoughtful about the timeline in which we wanted to implement CWZ, and that you object to the thought that this is a delay in any way, shape, or form. There's no one in this room that is in this business outside of DSNY that doesn't think that this has taken too long and that delays have been too long. There's no one. Carters, businesses, elected officials, advocates, it's taken too long. And the delay doesn't only come from the fact that we're just starting a pilot here on January 2nd. The idea of the plan was supposed to be full implementation of every single zone all together. It was part of the thinking that DSNY, the advocates, the Carters, and we had all together, that having no pilot, but the full implementation of the program would be the best way to go. That the pilot program could put it in jeopardy, the rest of it. So we had these thoughts. So we're gonna take much longer now for full implementation than we originally thought. So there is a delay. I might not be the borough president of Brooklyn by the time this is fully loaded. And it's sad. You guys might not be here. We will be talking about CWZ implementation still long after you're here, and I think that's unsatisfactory. I would like to, if you would allow me, Chair, to ask a couple of questions.
You may.
Thank you. The first one, it's to the cost savings. We thought about cost savings when we wrote the legislation. It didn't need to be 40% of the grading system. There's going to be efficiency in routes that made it so that there will be saving on fuel, a reduction in vehicle miles traveled. There was a conversation about how long the contract would have to be so that these Carters can plan and secure investment in a safe and secure way. And those are all the things that we took into consideration when we were talking about what the cost would be. And in our models, we had inconsequential increases in every single model we had for. That there might be increases, but inconsequential to the businesses that the Carters will be providing. So for it to be 40% just really speaks to, again, I think the priority set forth by DSNY, not by the legislation. To BIC, when is Cogent's license up for renewal?
Again, that is pending right now while we're settling the NOV.
So they're up for renewal now?
Yes.
So Cogent is up for renewal now?
Yes.
Okay. And so long as they pay previous violations, the previous violations are no longer used in consideration for revocation?
As I stated earlier in my testimony, we've only done 4 revocations in 15 years. We've done over 150 denials.
I misspoke.
Sorry.
So as long as they pay a violation, like $500,000, is that violation no longer used in consideration for their renewal?
It's all in consideration. Currently, as I stated before, the notice of violation is open, so I'm a little bit limited in what I can speak about today in terms of that
Right.
violation.
So just to put in perspective here, the largest payout to a violation in the history of BIC has been $500,000?
Yes.
And Cogent is the payer of that violation?
Yes.
Okay, that would to just regular old folks like us on this days would be a very significant thing should they get their renewal, is how we see it. That it'd be the largest fine ever paid by a Carter and that they would get a renewal. To the commissioner, was there any discretion used in choosing the carters for this zone? Any personal discretion or did you guys, so you picked the carters, you got it from the committee, there was a committee that put forth the grading system. From that, did you just pick the carters that they chose with no discretion put forth by anyone in DSNY?
So the way the procurement works is you have a vendor selection committee, and the selection committee goes through each of the submissions and gives grades on each of the factors for the 60% that wasn't price. And then those scores, sorry, not grades, those scores get combined with a price calculator to spit out the list of awardees in each zone. Is that correct,
Right.
Frank?
And then whatever is spit out is what you gave the contracts to be. Not one carter from that spit out was changed.
Well,
Or so,
like, for example, you can't have, one carter can't have more than 15 zones.
so out of
or
the
other
technical,
rules.
outside of the technical realm, which I understand, outside of the technical realm, did DNY change any recommendation made forth by the committee after the pricing was changed?
No.
So you've kept them straight up? Okay. Vic, is Cogent under investigation by the FBI?
I can't speak about that.
You can't speak about that. DSNY, are you aware if Cogent is under investigation by the FBI?
I am not.
You are not aware. Okay. So, Chair, I am done with my questions. And again, to say that I'm disappointed is an understatement, but grateful for this hearing. And just, this is my legacy. This is arguably the most important piece of legislation that I passed in my time as a city council member. And I will keep coming back. I will be a partner with DSNY in any way, shape, or form, with you in any way, shape, or form to make this successful. But I really feel like what we intended to do in the previous administration with the previous commissioner and myself and the advocates is not what we're seeing executed here. And if it fails, I want it to be clear that it is more of a reflection of this administration's work and not the unthoughtfulness that we put forth in the previous years. So thank you so much.
I mean, I would like to thank you, Borough President, and piggyback off one of your points. One would think that the largest payout, $500,000 to BIC, would potentially be worse than the 4 revocations, 150 denials that we have seen before BIC. So, I mean, that's something that ought to be considered because, Commissioner, let me ask you a question. If BIC denies a license, would that terminate the contract?
Yes.
So it seems pretty straightforward that the largest payout, $500,000, is something that really ought to be looked at.
Also, to be clear, I can terminate a contract for material breach even if BIC does not terminate the license.
I would also like to support the Borough President's point that the 14 factors, it seems like price was disproportionately weighed into without any guidance or, without I don't think it was within the spirit of the legislative intent being put forward by the Borough President, who was here to also speak about the legislative intent.
Yeah, and price was 40%, as we've discussed previously, as I testified to multiple times when Chair Nurse held a hearing on it. There was no secret that it was 40% of the overall score. I am very clear that the reason that it was 40% of the overall score is I thought that price increases would represent an existential threat to all of what this program is about. If the prices went up significantly, it would have become a huge burden on our small businesses to remove their waste. I very much respect the Borough President and his opinions on this. I understand that he thinks that price was weighed too highly, but I do want to respond and say that every single factor that was included in that legislation, sustainability, health and safety plans, all of it was considered quite thoughtfully and meaningfully. And we can talk more offline about specifics, and I'm happy to provide this council any information you want on any of the submissions or scoring, but we gave this our best shot. And I think that this committee and the Bureau of Commercial Waste has done an extraordinary job trying to implement in the real world what was quite theoretical when it was introduced and when this legislation was passed. And I take from what you said that we now have the obligation to show you and to make you proud of the program that you sponsored. I believe that we will.
And I just want to say, saving $20 for a business is not worth 5 human lives. And I just want to be very clear.
No one's saying that it is.
But I want to be clear, you're saying you're very thoughtful, and our thoughtfulness came from saving lives, actually saving lives. And
Yes.
we're talking about an environmental justice front and a worker safety front. We have workers that were undocumented working for Cogent. Cogent was the worst of them all. And for us, for the DSNY to not be able to take a second, did you have the authority, I guess is what I would ask.
I did not have
Did you have the authority to look at it and say, Cogent is on this list, they're under investigation, they're in a version of denial, there's something. Can you have any authority to say, hey, let's put these guys on the back burner?
I did not have authority to do that, and doing that would have undermined the entire procurement and the entire program. And had we done that, we wouldn't be in a position right now to roll this whole program out. I was advised by council that per the PPB rules, we could not exclude any bidder that had an active license with the Business Integrity Commission. At that time and still today, Cogent has an active license with the Business Integrity Commission.
And just to follow up, for a denial or a revocation, it is statutorily put in our title and code of 16A 509U, which sets out very specific reasons in which we can issue a denial. They're statutorily put into place. The $500,000 complaint notice violation was based on customer complaints, which is not a basis for denial. So we are stuck with our legislation.
So what are the bases for denial?
As I said before, they're listed in there, but usually it is a criminal conviction. It is lying to the commission under oath, and some other various factors that I could get.
Is safety a factor?
Safety is not a factor in terms of denial. It can be per local law 198 of 2019, which was enacted in 21, and we will take that under advisement. But to date, that has not been statutorily in our list of denial.
And I just want to add, as I mentioned before, that under the Commercial Waste Zone program, DSNY has the ability to terminate any contract that we hold for material breach. And I submit to you and to every Carter listening that crashes where they're found at fault and a pattern of them will constitute material breach in this program. We have a lot of regulatory authority that you have given us, and I am not afraid to use it. I understand that you are not pleased with how this procurement, some parts of how this procurement came out, but I think you will see that we are going to use, to the maximum extent possible, the authority that you have given us to change the way that this industry operates.
Thank you. I would also like to recognize Salamanca, who was here with us. Councilmember Nurse, one question?
Sorry, I just had a follow-up question to this, and you might have mentioned it earlier, and I'm sorry if I didn't retain that information, but the period of time in which, if you were to revoke, terminate someone's contract, which I'm glad to hear that you are so clear that you will do if people are, or if a Carter is in violation, but when you terminate a contract, what would be the kind of turnover time from selecting a new Carter to them hitting the ground operational?
I can't give you a specific time frame, but what I can say is when we have the authority in our agreements to replace a carter if a contract has been terminated or the carter is otherwise unable to perform its duties. And I would expect to do that quite quickly so that we can continue to have a reasonable amount of competition within each zone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to get into the rollout of the commercial waste zones. What does DSNY mean by a pilot program, since this is required by law?
I don't look at it as a pilot program. I look at it as phase one
Okay.
of a rollout. And as I mentioned, phase one will be the first zone, it's Queens Central. But there is no intent to use this to decide, are we moving forward or not? Stipulated, we're moving forward.
How does the department intend to measure success of this phase one, and what metrics have you set to evaluate the first phase?
There are a lot of different metrics of success that we will look at, among them customer service, vehicle miles traveled, safety, compliance with rules and regulations that are in place. And that's why I felt very strongly about doing a phase one with just one zone, so we can make sure that we got it right. And if not, if we have to tweak before we roll out the other zones.
Thank you, and just wanted you to know that, in my capacity, I also care very deeply that the program gets implemented in a way that works. So I don't know that rushing is also necessarily in our interest, but I'm curious to know, though, that make sure that we're doing it expeditiously as possible while also not compromising the quality in the rollout.
Yeah, I call it thoughtfully and aggressively.
Is Queens Central still on schedule to begin in September 2024?
Yes, but the window is from September to January 2nd. So I would say it would fully start in earnest January 2nd, but that has always been the plan and it hasn't deviated.
So it's not likely to begin September of 24?
The period that the businesses have to enter into new CWZ contracts runs between September and January 2nd. It must be complete by January
Got
2nd.
it. Thank you for the clarification. Assuming success of the Queens Central pilot, what zones are expected to be rolled out next?
I don't want to put forth a go-forward plan and schedule at this time because I want to learn from phase one. We've obviously talked about it and have put through some quite aggressive schedules, but I really need to see before I comment publicly on, who and when. I need to see that phase one goes according to plan or decide if we need to tweak.
What is the timeline for commercial waste zones over the next 2 years, possibly? Just trying to get an understanding of how many of the 20 zones we'd be able to include as part of, these next 2 years.
As I said, we are going to do this thoughtfully and aggressively. We do have a schedule now that's a theoretical schedule, but that Frank briefed me on. We do have a 2-year schedule in our planning. I don't want to commit to that to you today because, again, I need to see how this first zone goes. Did we get it right, for example, with the 4 months to get the September, October, November, December, to get the new contracts in place?
And to be clear, the 2-year planning is for all the zones. And I understand that you're not committing today.
I do have a schedule that our Assistant Commissioner of Commercial Waste has prepared at my direction that would roll out the zones in approximately 2 years. I don't know if it's 2 years to the day, but I do have that schedule. Again, it will all depend on, not all, but it will largely depend on how this first phase rollout goes.
At what point will the department assess the success or begin measuring the success of the first?
We're going to begin measuring is on January 3rd.
One day? That's ambitious.
No, I mean, part of the beauty of this program is that for the first time ever, we're actually going to have meaningful data about this commercial waste industry. What's collected, how much, by whom, where. Like, we've never had that before as a city. We know that there's approximately 20 million pounds of commercial waste collected a day, but like not that much more than that.
What amount of time does DSNY consider to be reasonable notice to businesses and carters when considering the period from which CWZ implementation in a new zone is announced until such implementation begins?
I think we gave plenty of notice this time, but we'll obviously look to give as much notice as possible. We are certainly going to give a minimum of 4 months prior to the rule effective date, but we'd like to aim for more.
So right now the standard is 4 months for
It's like
Give or take.
4 to, hold on, it says, a minimum of 4 months prior to the rule effective date and 7 months prior to the implementation start date. So at least 7 months.
And I understand that you have a tentative schedule for the next 2 years for the full rollout of commercial waste zones. Is there any anticipation the implementation of any of these zones will occur during summer months?
Yes?
All right, now I'm going to turn over to worker safety training. Local law requires awardees to ensure that all workers have received safety trainings. How will DSNY work with awardees to ensure the quality and effectiveness of these trainings?
So the safety trainings requirements are specified in the law, and carters were able to make additional commitments, as I mentioned, in their health and safety plans that are part of the carter contracts. So for each of the health and safety plans, those plans are now part of the contract, and we on the enforcement side can hold each of the carters to their health and safety plans.
Will DLT staff which work on Vision Zero be involved in worker safety trainings?
Yes. Eric Beaton, who is the Deputy Commissioner for Transportation Planning and Management at the Department of Transportation, is one of Mayor Adams' appointees on the CWZ Safety Task Force.
How are you working to ensure that carters who are awarded a single zone and are likely to be much smaller in their operations, infrastructure, and resources complete the safety trainings required of them?
Well, at the end of this month, every carter in the program will have to show us that all of their in-field employees have completed 40 hours of safety training in their supervisory staff, 8 hours. They'll also going forward, and then there have to be refresher trainings every single year, and new employees have a small time period where they have to complete the 40-hour training as well.
These trainings are required to be at no cost to the workers. How will DSNY ensure that workers are paid for their time in these trainings and are not otherwise penalized for their employer's cost to provide them?
Frank, do you want to speak to how you're going to enforce that?
Yeah, we have a compliance and audits team that works under me. We'll be receiving their certificates. We'll be conducting various audits to ensure that number one, the workers receive the training, and number two, that the sources of the training are meets the requirements of the program.
During the committee's hearing last October, some private commercial waste workers asked for a better mechanism to file complaints against their employers without fear. Has DSNY contemplated a new mechanism for employees' complaints against awardees?
We do have a portal, and we will have an online web form for different complaints to come into the Department of Sanitation, specifically for the Bureau of Commercial Waste. So workers can leverage those technologies to reach out to us.
Can you speak to when those will be available?
They'll be available when the first zone goes live, but they will apply only to the Carters in those zones.
All right, thank you for that. Transfer stations. Some awardees will have a financial advantage over others because they have easier access to certain transfer stations. How will BIC and DSNY regulate transfer stations to ensure that this does not get in the way of a competitive market?
Well, the costs associated with transfer stations, I think, were factored into the pricing that was included as part of the RFP process.
Did you find that those applicants or those carters who had access to their own transfer stations were more competitive than others who did not have that?
I can't answer that question. I'm not exactly sure because I don't know what's in the Carters' heads and how they came up with the pricing that they put forward.
How will BIC and DSNY supervise transfer stations and enforce the prohibition against idling?
We are training now 10 additional sanitation police officers to carry out a lot of the in-field enforcement associated with this program. Importantly, and for like the first time that anyone in the department can remember, DSNY sanitation police are getting the state motor vehicle carrier training, which will allow them to stop trucks on the street. So in real time, rather than after the fact, they are getting that training this summer so that they will be ready to go as soon as the program begins. We do have a whole environmental protection unit that is part of a specific division of the sanitation police that regulates and does a lot of the enforcement against transfer stations.
Have any awardees expressed interest in using the city's rail or marine waste transfer stations?
Yes, specifically 91st Street and is Southwest Brooklyn. They have available capacity. North Shore and Hamilton do not have available capacity, and we did have Carters express interest in using those. We are in the process now of coming up with what our actual costs would be. I don't want to prejudge to the point of not following through, but I will say my sense is that our costs to use those city-owned transfer stations are going to be not competitive in the market and perhaps cost prohibitive for use. But when we develop the costs, we would have to bring those costs to you for you to put them, to allow us to set those rates in the law.
When will those costs be available for carters that intend to use the city's rail or marine waste transfer station?
As I said, I highly doubt that any carters will intend to use those transfer stations because my sense is that the costs are going to be prohibitive, but we are coming up with those cost estimates this summer.
We heard from a carter who said they expressed intent to tip at a marine transfer station, which would be in line with the bill's intent to reduce vehicles' miles traveled and use facilities that comply with labor standards. Yet this company was not selected, and they speculate it was due to the cost of tipping at a marine transfer station. DSNY testified in opposition to committee member Nurse's bill, Intro 55, which would require DSNY to accept commercial waste at the marine transfer station. Why did DSNY allow carters to express intent to use MTS if DSNY had no plans to allow it?
So we were interested to know what the level of interest was in using our MTS. So as an example, if no one had said yes, we wouldn't go through the exercise of coming up with the cost. Given that, a number of Carters, how many was it that expressed interest?
13 out of 18.
Given that 13 Carters expressed some interest in exploring using those transfer stations, we have started the process of coming up with what would the city's costs be to allow that. We know that 2 transfer stations are currently at full capacity, but we have 2 others with excess capacity. And when we have our cost estimate, so will you. And then if it's reasonable enough, we'll take the steps that we need to put it into effect.
Councilmember Nurse, I believe you have questions on this issue.
Sorry, yeah, I just had a follow-up, and thank you for your answers. And we are looking forward to the environmental review that's associated with this bill. I think, in addition to the environmental benefits in the truck vehicle reduction, I think what we heard, at least as my time during chair, was that Carters would be concerned that they're at the back of the line because they don't have a transfer facility or a tipping facility in their zone. I had a question about how many, for the record, how many Carters that have let me put it this way. Did all Carters that own their own transfer tipping facility get awarded a zone with that facility?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we can definitely get that information.
Okay. I think that would be helpful to know, to see, who is at a disadvantage here, like how many companies have an advantage over others where they might push people to the back of the line.
I can tell you for sure that Carters that do not own a transfer station or their own place to dump certainly got awards.
Yes, we know, because there's only so many transfer stations, but it would be interesting to understand the proportions, and then to see where we could ensure that people have an opportunity to dump their payload, faster and get back out on the road to be competitive.
I have a question for Assistant Commissioner Marshall on the complaint portal. What's the follow-up look like if someone submits a complaint?
So the complaint will come into the Bureau of Commercial Waste. We have a team that will filter the complaints. We triage those complaints, and if necessary, they'll raise up to me, and I will inform the commissioner, and we'll take the appropriate action.
Thank you. Next topic of questions is on vehicles miles traveled. Looking at the list of selected Carters, one can see that some Carters who have facilities were awarded zones far away from their facilities, where their facilities are located. Let me start that again. Looking at the list of selected Carters, one can see that some Carters who have facilities were awarded zones far away from where their facilities are located. Metropolitan Carting, for example, was not awarded the district where its transfer station is, while some Carters that operate their own transfer stations were not awarded contracts at all. If reducing vehicle miles traveled is meant to be one of the main goals of this program, can you please explain this?
We achieved the goal of reducing by 50% commercial Carter vehicle miles traveled. So it's equivalent to a reduction of 12 million fewer miles driven per year.
Why was Action Carting awarded so many zones far away from their Bronx facility specifically?
It was all based on how those RFP responses were scored.
Why was Metropolitan not awarded the zone in which their Brooklyn facility is located?
Same answer.
It seems as though we could have achieved a lot of, a reduction in vehicles miles traveled, but I defer to your response. Did a Carter, which included in their RFP response a disposal plan that incorporates marine transfer stations get more points than a Carter who proposed disposing of the refuse at a land-based transfer station?
I'm not going to speak about specific scoring, partially because I wasn't on the committee, but I also don't think it's appropriate.
But you did mention that that scoring will be available eventually.
We can talk to you about providing scoring and access to the information. I just want to talk to our ACO and our general counsel, but my intent is to make it available to you.
Thank you. Besides traveling from their garage to their zones and from their zones to transfer station, How will the city ensure that carters aren't unnecessarily traveling outside of their respective zone?
We've built out a telematics system and have required that all carters use the telematics system so that we have information, for example, like geofencing, like has this truck gone outside of its zone?
And which
Did
agency
it
will be
speed?
responsible for this?
What? We
And-
will. Sanitation.
How will such enforcement take place, and what is and is there a penalty structure for traveling outside of their zone?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Is there a penalty structure for when a
Yes, if they go outside of their zone, it's a material breach of the contract.
okay?
And I can terminate the contract for material breach.
Good to know. Recycling is my next set of questions. Only a few here. The DSNY originally intended to require carters to charge 30% less than putrescible waste for recycling and organics in order to incentivize waste diversion. Before the RFP was released, you chose to remove this 30% metric and simply require carters to charge less for recycling and organics. Can you tell us in general how much less carters propose to charge?
Yes, we actually exceeded it. Do you have the specific numbers for recycling, Frank?
I'll find it.
I had it in my testimony. I think it was 32% for recycling and 18% for organics.
Do you feel this will be enough to incentivize waste diversion?
Absolutely. I was ecstatic from this outcome. First of all, we are going to make that a key component of our outreach materials to businesses about how much less they will pay for source-separated recyclables and organics. And I believe that now is the appropriate time, as I also mentioned in my testimony, to expand the requirements for source-separated organics to all businesses, because it will be, it will bring their costs down. They will do the right thing and get lower costs, and we can be sure of that. And so I really would love to work with you on moving that forward.
DSNY is required to conduct outreach and education by way of seminars, webinars, conferences, and a multilingual public education program. At the budget hearing, you showed us some multilingual flyers, which are a start, but can you speak to DSNY's plans for all of these things?
Yes, starting in July, as I mentioned, our canvassers, an MWBE, Metropolitan Strategies and Solutions, will be hitting the commercial corridors in Queens Central, providing all, like the flyers and having conversations with business owners. On Wednesday, our mailer will go out to every business. There are about 8,000 of them in the district. And so that outreach will continue until September, when the carters will be, who are operating in those zones, will be approved to go do the direct outreach to businesses to start to negotiate the new contracts, which have to be put in place between September and January 2nd.
In its outreach campaign, DSNY is permitted to seek the assistance of both for and nonprofit corporations. DSNY reported it had contracted with Metropolitan Solutions for $1.5 million to perform outreach. While we appreciate the department's working with an MWBE business, they are headquartered in Washington, D.C., and have only one client in New York City listed on their website, the Office of Emergency Management. Can you speak to this organization's work in New York City and why you believe they are the best consultant for the job, as opposed to one of the many New York City-based MWBE businesses that do this work?
So this was done largely based on, well, based on a few factors, but price was an important factor, the way this procurement was done. And my understanding is that they are going to be hiring local outreach associates to do that work, who speak a variety of languages, as we've specified.
Do you know when that local outreach will begin?
July.
And how many individuals are they looking to hire locally?
It's 30 outreach associates, and Frank confirmed for me that I was correct, that we're looking to hire, even though the company is not based in New York, they would hire local residents to perform the outreach.
Have the staff at Metropolitan who undertake the outreach campaign undergone any sort of training about the local New York City landscape?
Frank?
Yeah, they'll undergo comprehensive training for like the New York landscape, the local law 199.
Wait, I want to be clear. He asked about the people who run the company.
Yeah,
I think Frank is
Metropolitan.
answering about the outreach associates.
The outreach. I'm referring to the company itself.
Yeah, I mean, over the past several weeks, I've been on calls with the owner of the company. He's been well versed in regards to the program, the landscape of New York City, and.
But there is no training plan for the owner of the company. The training is planned for the outreach associates who will be doing the work on the ground.
Yeah, there are a lot of organizations that already have, that have hired locally already, but I won't belabor the point. The first of the commercial way zones to be implemented is Queens Central, one of the most diverse places on earth. Have the staff in Metropolitan who will undertake the outreach campaign undergone any sort of cultural competency training?
Yeah, so they're being hired now, so if the question is in the past tense, no, but they will. Among the languages that they are going to speak is going to be Spanish, Mandarin, Chinese, Cantonese, Russian, Korean, Haitian, Creole, Arabic, Bengali, Hindi, Urdu, Yiddish, and Hebrew.
Do you know what percentage of languages are left out of that? From what folks?
No, we took all the local law 30 languages, and then
Okay.
we added languages based on the types of businesses in that zone. So it'll change from zone to zone.
Do you have any information on how the language how the languages will be allocated among the different 30 associates? Would it be based off of the dominating demographic or the languages served? How would that work?
I can't speak to that now, but we can get you that information.
Okay. Be very helpful to have that information to make sure that we're reaching our businesses in the languages that they speak and that we have the corresponding level of personnel based off of the languages that are spoken. In terms of, one second. I know that mailers are going out on Wednesday. How many mailers are being sent out and how many businesses? I think you said 8,000 businesses, right?
Yep, a mailer will be sent out to each of the approximately 8,000 businesses in the area. And in addition to that, there's some like government agencies or quasi-government agencies, like for example, the MTA, the Port Authority, schools. We've already started outreach to those types of customers that aren't necessarily businesses.
What is the cost per mailer?
Josh? 27 cents plus postage.
Josh is, I know this is, I didn't require it off the witness stand, but Commissioner said it. Thank you for that, Josh. 27 cents per mailer, that's very helpful to know. In your opinion, does your current contract with Metropolitan provide enough funding to satisfy DSNY's statutory requirement to perform outreach?
Think so, but I can't say 100% yet. I need to see with this phase one what's required and how it goes. And to the extent that our needs exceed what we have, I will make sure to be very clear about that to you.
Do you anticipate that as you expand to more zones that the 30 associates hired will increase in numbers by Metropolitan? Or is 30...
Depends if you do zones concurrently or one at a time. So is it possible that Metropolitan would have more than 30 people operating on the streets of New York City? Yes. At any given time, yes. Is it definite? No. We also plan to leverage the mayor's PEU unit to have them help with this important effort. This is a really big outreach campaign that we're doing.
How will DSNY monitor whether new business is established in a particular zone And will DSNY perform CWZ outreach to new businesses in that zone after CWZs have been implemented there?
You know, my hope and expectation is like when a new business starts today, they hire a carter. They know where to go to hire a carter. We have all of the information about the program available at nyc.gov/commercial waste. It's very easy to find on our main website. So will we be monitoring and will we know every time a new business opens? Absolutely not. I don't want to set that expectation, but my hope and the plan is for this information to be out there as among like the things that you have to comply with in New York City, such that any new business that opens up would know to contact one of the 3 carters in their zone.
We also know that in addition to DSNY's outreach campaign, awardees themselves are also required to engage in public outreach to address the transition to CWZs. What methods will carters be permitted to use when conducting outreach to their clients?
So importantly, we will have to review all of their outreach materials.
You will have to or not have to?
We will have to.
Okay.
We want to review and approve. We don't want carters putting information about the program in their outreach materials that are like misleading or incorrect.
Yeah, one of the concerns, right, is that we want to make sure that DSNY, that your outreach does not contradict, my apologies, that Metropolitan's outreach does not contradict that of DSNY.
Exactly.
So how do we make sure that they're in sync?
Oh, so for Metropolitan, we give Metropolitan all of the outreach materials. Like they're not going to generate their own content, and we will be training them on the program and what the goals are.
And how will you know that they are giving those communications to their clients? What kind of monitoring mechanism do you have in place?
We have an assistant commissioner at the Department of Sanitation who just oversees outreach, and so that assistant commissioner will be working directly with Metropolitan on this.
All right, question 15, well, not 15, question 1,000,000 at this point.
Oh, and additionally, like, they will have to fill out a form every time they do a visit to a business, so we will have data about where they've gone as well.
My next set of questions is on the long-term planning for commercial waste zones. Is there any point at which DSNY would reassess the boundaries of one or more CWZs? And if so, what might be the circumstances giving rise to that?
I don't foresee it sitting here, but I guess anything's possible.
Anything is possible. I agree with that. How will the agency ensure businesses are the least affected if a commercial carter is contracted to work in a particular zone, but for some reason becomes unable to perform its contracted duties?
As I mentioned before, we have the ability in our contracts to replace a carter that drops out or is not operating in a zone for any reason, whether it be we terminated the contract or they can no longer perform their duties. We have the ability to replace that carter with another carter at our discretion.
And assuming there's a termination of a contract, or if BIC determines that a license should be denied, what happens then if they become ineligible to provide election service? Like, what's the next step?
We choose a carter to replace them.
DSNY are the 14 factors? Will you be employing those 14 factors for the carter replacement? I think we got to this earlier.
I need to come back to you on it.
Okay. Let's make sure we get answers to those questions. Council, DSNY can award initial contracts of 10 years and renew such contracts for 5 years up to 2 times. It seems that any carter which receives an initial award and both renewals would then be rendered ineligible to continue services after their final renewal runs out. What is the plan for commercial waste collection services after this program runs for 20 years, assuming, Commissioner, you won't be here for another 20 years?
I was going to say, I think someone else will have to do another procurement after all of the renewals are exhausted, I would recommend to them that they start that procurement several years prior to the last day of the last renewal so that it can be done in time and they get to have this type of fun that we're having now.
Thank you for that. Next set of questions on medical waste. We had heard from Carters, which specialize in medical waste removal, who say they are very connected to local hospitals and institutions for both medical and other waste removal. Yet under CWZ, they will lose their ability to collect all but medical waste. Is this something that DSNY considered when developing this program?
It's prohibited by the law.
Could a medical waste hauler also provide refuse collection services to his medical waste customers?
Not under the council's law.
Is the administration open to exploring
As I mentioned, all of these requirements come from the law.
Is it also fair to say that if medical waste haulers are able to collect refuse collection services from medical waste customers, it would reduce vehicles miles traveled?
I don't know, we haven't studied it because the law prohibits it.
Could you please describe how BIC regulates medical waste?
Oh, Bob made an important point. It would have to be a separate truck anyway. So for medical waste, it doesn't go in the same truck as refuse. So even if it's the same company, we're talking about two different trucks. So I don't think that this is an area would make any sense to pursue.
Are there any trucks that have multi-purpose use for both kinds?
I guess dual bin trucks, but anyway, it's prohibited by the law.
Okay.
Anecdotally, there's only 11 medical waste haulers licensees.
Thank you for that. Councilmember, you have additional questions?
Sorry, I had a question, unrelated, off topic, but a couple committee members asked about an update on the RFP for the European-style containerization. Could you just give us on the record where we're at?
Yes. The RFP is out and we have received bids.
Do you know how many bids you've received?
I do, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say. I
No?
should
Okay,
not say.
I see the head
I haven't
shaking. Okay.
advised by council
And just
I
will you
should not say.
remind me when you hope to select your final vendors?
Well, we plan to roll the program out, we plan for the bins to hit the streets in May. I don't have the timeline in front of me, but over the next several months, we hope to put in place this contract.
Okay, thank you so much.
Commissioner, with respect to my pre-considered intro, you mentioned that you would be open to looking at different draft changes.
Yes.
Could you speak to what makes sense to you or what doesn't make sense to you with this bill?
As I mentioned, here's the thing. I read it and I was like, this thing is great. I really like it. This is great. And then my lawyers told me that there were things that I do not remember at the time that we could do to tighten it up or make it match the spirit and intent of what you were getting at.
But would you say
So
that
I don't have off of the top of my head what those specific minor drafting things are, but I know that the team at Sanitation could very easily and quickly get them to you.
would you say that you support the intent of the bill?
Yeah.
Okay, and you are also happy to have conversations about that as well?
For
Bill?
sure.
I guess we're close to wrapping up here. I have a question on the safety task force. Who is on the safety task force? How was it selected, and why were past members replaced?
Sure. The Safety Task Force, hold on, I'm just pulling it up. Do you have it here? Okay. Safety Task Force will include myself or a designee, Frank Marshall, the chair of the Business Integrity Commission, the speaker of the City Council or a designee, 4 mayoral appointees who are going to be Stephen Hoffner. He's the DSNY General Superintendent Level 1. He runs our Division of Safety and Training. Will Harris, our Director of Audit and Compliance in the Bureau of Commercial Waste. Eric Beaton, as I mentioned, the DOT's Deputy Commissioner for Transportation Planning and Management. And Daniel Wright, President of Teamsters Local 813. The Speaker can appoint, in addition to herself, 4 additional people. We have, I think, one person currently who is a holdover appointed by Speaker Johnson. So if you want to update or increase the number of people appointed, I would say now is our moment, because we'd like to meet in June.
Why were some members recently dismissed?
Well, the mayor wanted, I felt that it was important for this administration to appoint its own, make its own appointments to the committee. I'm not sure who was dismissed or not, but certainly people who no longer work at the Department of Sanitation shouldn't be representing the department on the committee. But I don't know who the old appointments were, just that it is common, not just on this, but on anything as new administrations turn over to make new appointments.
Thank you to everyone for testifying today. This panel is excused. Thank you so much for testifying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will take a 5-minute break and return for public testimony after the break.
Thanks, guys. Oh, I haven't got you yet. Yes.
Sergeants, I'm ready to roll.
Can we please have a seat? We're ready to roll. Thank you. Shh. Please have a seat. Thank you.
I consider public testimony to be the most important part of a hearing. You know, we love to hear from the public. Didn't mean to disrupt the energy there, but I had to go to the restroom, and now I'm back. So we need you more than ever to make sure that your voices are heard and that we're holding feet to the fire for this administration, okay? I now open the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recordings as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant-at-Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card with the Sergeant-at-Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 2 minutes to speak on today's hearing topic. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony you wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant-at-Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recording will not be accepted. So the first panel will be Megan Carr, Eric Goldstein, Alia Sumro, and Jane Selden. And thank you for your patience. You may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Megan Carr, and I'm a legal fellow at New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. Thank you, Chair Breo and the council members, for the opportunity to testify before you today. This oversight hearing on the commercial waste zones is desperately needed. In partnership with the Transform Don't Trash Coalition, NILPI advocated for and celebrated the passage of this monumental law, which calls for dramatic change in the city's commercial waste handling. 5 years later, we are still calling on a robust, transparent, equitable, and expedient implementation of the law. There's a need for greater transparency in regard to how awardees were selected for each commercial zone. While we were pleased to see the announcement of the commercial waste zone awardees in January, the lack of clarity surrounding the selection process greatly concerned us. For example, we do not know how the selected waste haulers' plans for supporting waste reduction, reuse, and recycling factored into their ultimate selection, nor whether these waste reduction plans are sufficiently rigorous to achieve the goal of zero waste to landfills and incineration by 2030, mandated by Local Law 86 of 2023. We do not know each hauler's plans to adopt the safest possible working and operating practices, which is of particular concern as yet another New Yorker was killed in Manhattan this May by a private sanitation truck as it reportedly reversed down a one-way street. The truck is owned by one of the named CWZ awardees. For these reasons, we urge DSNY to release further information on the process for selecting haulers. One of the central motivations behind Local Law 199 was to lessen burdens on the environmental justice communities by decreasing truck traffic and the dangers that come with it. We therefore call on DSNY to publish the planned locations of transfer stations, recycling facilities, and truck yards to be utilized by the commercial waste haulers selected to operate in the new system, and to provide neighboring communities with clear plans for mitigation and enforcement to minimize the harmful impacts of these waste facilities and truck yards. We further urge DSNY to begin allowing, may I briefly?
You can continue.
Thank you. Begin allowing commercial waste haulers to utilize the department's own state-of-the-art marine and rail transfer stations, which can help further reduce diesel truck miles and GHG emissions from commercial waste zones. And in addition to decreasing the amount of vehicle miles traveled by waste trucks, we also want to emphasize the need to reduce waste more broadly. Increasing access to community composting is a simple and proven way to do both, and we thus enthusiastically support the compost processing legislation introduced by Councilmember Nurse, Intro 696, and the creation of organic waste composting facilities in each borough. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
No, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Abreu and Council. Eric Goldstein from the Natural Resources Defense Council. Today's hearing deals with two of the biggest challenges facing the department in 2024: how to deal sustainably with organics, the single largest portion of the waste stream, and how to implement the landmark 2019 council law intended to transform the chaotic current system of commercial waste collection. Each of these issues really needs its own hearing. Today is really a twofer for anyone watching or listening or reading the transcript. How the city deals with the organics in a more sustainable fashion rather than dumping thousands of tons a day into landfills and incinerators is the central environmental challenge facing the department today. Right now, the current disposal path for these materials is an environmental nightmare. Landfills, incinerators, environmental justice problems. Composting is the answer. I'm summarizing my written testimony. Despite efforts going back more than a decade, changes come too slowly, and the Adams administration cuts to community composting have taken away the most effective strategy for educating and training New Yorkers on composting. The most immediate step, as you know, is for the council to restore and baseline $7 million in funding to support community composting, but more is needed. The critical missing link is sufficient in-city composting capacity so that collected organics can be directed to their highest and best use. That's composting. That's where Intro 696, introduced by Councilmember Nurse and 18 others, comes in. What a beautiful and necessary idea. For the first time, the department would be obligated to actually compost all organics. This legislation will begin to direct the city waste policy away from sending organics to be co-digested with sewage at the city's wastewater treatment plants, a trouble-plagued semi-solution to the organics disposal problem. It will help ensure that material New Yorkers are separating is actually composted, which is what New Yorkers seem to think is happening to the organics they separate. And it'll provide good green jobs to city residents as the city gears up its composting operation rather than sending these jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars a year to out-of-city landfills and incinerators. To be sure, the tonnage goals and timetable are ambitious, but while the details can be discussed and modified as necessary, this legislation directing the department to significantly expand in-city composting operations is essential to the future of a sustainable New York City. Finally, the second subject of today's agenda is implementation of Local Law 19 of 199. We have a lot of concerns about the implementation of this strategy, about the lack of transparency in selecting zone awardees, about the track record of some of the awardees, and about the pace of implementation. Intro 352 would create a commercial waste zone working group. That would be the first opportunity to increase transparency, and we support that concept. Finally, preconsidered Intro 2064 deals with one of the unanswered questions that surfaced. What happens when a zone awardee merges with or is acquired by another awardee, and the consequences are that the new combination results in a single awardee having more than 15 zones, or there being fewer than 3 awardees in each zone? This bill provides the answer to that. We strongly support this legislation as well. We thank you for your attention and spell out our concerns and suggestions in more detail in our written testimony.
Thank you, Eric. And I have to say that this committee is prioritizing Intro 696 to your point as well, Megan, about the processing of compost facilities, community composting is very much top of mind for the speaker and this body. So we're going to work very, very, very hard to make that a reality. And I thank NNRDC for support of my pre-considered intro. Next.
Thank you.
Alia.
Good afternoon. My name is Alia Sumro, and I'm the Deputy Director for New York City Policy at the New York League of Conservation Voters. Thank you, Chair Abreu, as well as members of the Committee on Sanitation for the opportunity to testify today. NYLCV strongly supported the passage of the Commercial Waste Zones Law in 2019. Championed by a wide group of stakeholders, this law will overhaul the city's antiquated and inefficient commercial waste management system by dividing the city into 20 zones, limiting each zone to a maximum of 3 private sanitation companies selected through a competitive bid process and holding companies to higher standards. NYLCV welcomed DSNY's announcement in January of the Queens Central Commercial Waste Zone, the city's first zone to be implemented as part of this law. While it has taken the city far too long to get to this point for such a common-sense policy, if implemented in a comprehensive, timely, and transparent manner, the CWZ law will bring New York closer to its zero waste goals and improve the safety of workers, pedestrians, and cyclists. It will also cut down on traffic congestion, improve air quality, and curb the city's tailpipe pollution and carbon emissions, which is especially important to low-income and communities of color. Although the first zone is slated to roll out in September of this year, we are still waiting for the law's full implementation. That's 19 other zones. While we understand the importance of starting off on the right foot and learning from other cities' attempts at overhauling their waste system, it is imperative that the city carries out this law in a timely and transparent manner. Moreover, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the importance of funding for CWZ staffing, outreach, and education, especially as DSNY ramps up the rollout of more zones and implements the citywide residential organics program. We appreciate that DSNY has allocated $3.2 million for CWZ education and outreach, but we hope that more funding is allocated in the out years as more zones are rolled out. Lastly, we hope that the city restores the community composting budget. Just wrapping up, for the bills being considered today, we support Intro 352. We also support Intro 696, and we're still reviewing the pre-considered bill, and we look forward to working with the council, the admin, and other advocates to get these bills passed. NYLCV looks forward to working with the council and implementing the CWZ law in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you. This panel is excused. Next up, we have Jane Selden, Janelle Scott, Matthew Civello, Christine Datz Romero.
Thank you, Chair Abreu, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jane Selden, and I chair a committee on waste reduction at the climate activist group 350 NYC. Recognizing that local composting plays a vital role in moving our city closer to achieving its greenhouse gas reduction and infrastructure resiliency goals, we fully support Intro 696 and thank Councilmember Nurse for introducing it. Passing the mandatory citywide organics recycling law last year was a major achievement. If successfully implemented, a third of the city's waste stream will be diverted from landfill and incinerators, which not only emit greenhouse gases, but poison the environment of surrounding communities. An increase in organics diversion also means a reduction in emissions from sanitation trucks traveling to the city's waste transfer stations and from the trucks that transport waste long distances to upstate New York and other states. Climate warming transportation emissions will further be lowered if organic waste is processed into high-quality compost locally, as Intro 696 mandates. The bill is also consistent with our belief that the most environmentally beneficial use of organic waste is conversion to compost rather than biogas, a costly procedure that, at least so far, has only worked sporadically. Compost is a valuable resource that can be used to nourish the depleted soil of local parks, community gardens, and street trees, and the over 12,000 rain gardens the city has created as part of its climate resiliency plan. Compost is especially important for flood mitigation because it acts as a sponge, retaining up to 6 times its weight in water. Big Reuse's award-winning Queensbridge composting site exemplifies the many benefits of local composting operations. Instead of shutting it down, the city should use it as a model for building more sites like it in every borough once this bill is passed, which we hope is soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello? Oh, testing. Hi, my name is Janelle Scott, and I'm the Climate Director at Align, also a member of the Transform Don't Trash Coalition, where we're working to transform New York City's commercial trash industry to foster clean and healthy communities for all New Yorkers. Thank you so much, Sanitation Committee Chair Abreu, for allowing me to testify today. I know we've already heard a lot about Cogent today, so I would just add that on May 16th, there was also an incident with a private sanitation truck from Liberty Ashes that fatally struck a pedestrian near Washington Square Park. These 2 incidents are just 2 examples of avoidable incidents that have occurred since the implementation of our commercial waste zone law has been delayed. Addition to that, under Local Law 199, the Department of Sanitation can enforce more rigorous safety standards for awarded carters. But while this implementation is delayed, so is the enforcement of these standards that are set to protect our sanitation workers and our communities. We're delighted to hear that the first zone is rolled out in the fall. However, it's very concerning that there are still 19 zones left to be implemented. Additionally, that Liberty Ashes and Cogent are on the list of awardees for these zones. It would be an absolute shame that after years really of tireless work to develop, advocate, and pass this legislation, that 5 years later we will develop a system that can create the same or even worse challenges than the current system that we have that is impacting our communities. We do implore the DSNY as well, considering the high amount of waste that New York generates, to allow waste haulers to utilize the department's marine and rail transfer stations, which can help further reduce mileage and emitted emissions. And to this end, are supportive of Councilmember Nurse's Intro 55 bill that would require the Department of Sanitation to accept commercial solid waste and at these marine transfer stations. May I finish? I just have a few sentences. Thank you. It is imperative that the Council supports the full and timely implementation of the remaining 19 zones and supports DSNY in the commercial waste zone implementation and oversight of the awardees. And to this end, are appreciative that Intro 352 has been introduced to create a working group to allow that support for evaluating and supporting the implementation of the processes. Thank you for the opportunity to raise the concerns of our coalition, and we look forward to working with the City Council as well as the DSNY to ensure the highest possible environmental, safety, and customer protection across our new waste system.
Thank you, Janelle.
Hi, I'm Matthew Savello, Chair of the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board, and will be delivering testimony on behalf of the 4 active solid waste advisory boards. My testimony today concerning Intro 696, and our commentary regarding Intro 352 will be submitted with our written testimony. The 4 solid waste advisory boards are supportive of Intro 696, establishing local compost capacity in each borough, though ambitious, would provide the first foundational step in creating an infrastructure for a robust, resilient, and decentralized organic solution that would prioritize compost rather than disposal solutions for the city's residential organic material. Consistent with the SWAB's previous recommendations, we ask, however, that the following suggested modifications be considered: the reestablishment of the compost siting task force or the successor entity, explicitly including nonprofits as eligible entities to contribute to the construction, operation, and maintenance of sited compost facilities, and prioritize the current and recently functioning community composting processing operators such as Big Reuse, Earth Matter, Compost Power, BK Rot, Red Hook Farms, Greenfen Organics, Fokashi, and the Lower East Side Ecology Center, as well as the Botanic Gardens. In fiscal year 24, the city will have spent $200 million to export approximately 1 million tons of residential organics as waste for disposal. Intro 696, local processing of organics as compost, recognize residential organics as a valuable resource rather than a waste material and diverts this resource away from incineration, landfills, and co-digestion, with the additional benefit of creating local green jobs within the city instead of exporting that valuable resource as garbage for disposal at great social, environmental, and financial cost. For these reasons, we are extremely supportive of 696. Our full testimony explaining what was highlighted here in more detail will follow. Thank you, Chair Abreu, for holding this important hearing today.
Thank you, and we appreciate everything that Mahan Swab is doing. This panel is excused. We next have Mary Krieger, Brian Gardner, and Charles DiPolito.
My name is Mary Krieger, and I speak on behalf of It's Easy Being Green. It's Easy Being Green is a neighborhood environmental action group on the Upper West Side. We've been active since 2019 in educating our neighbors about composting through building outreach, door knocking, and dissemination of information at events. I speak today in support of Intro 0696. I thank the sponsor, Councilmember Nurse, and the chair of the committee, Shauna Brew, for their environmental leadership. I also thank the City Council for making the separation of organics mandatory. There are 4 reasons that we support this forward-looking proposal. First, we need to avoid the carbon emissions involved in transporting massive amounts of food scraps, which will accrue when the composting becomes mandatory. Building facilities like the one in Staten Island in each borough will slash these emissions. Most landfills cannot compost food scraps. These food scraps emit methane. The state-of-the-art facilities like the one in Staten Island emit no greenhouse gases, and the local sites run by the composting groups that exist now also do not emit greenhouse gases. A third reason that we should pass this law is that New York should not outsource pollution from its trash stream to other communities, especially to social justice communities. With the increased volume from mandatory composting, the likelihood that the city will send compost to the same landfills that handle our trash increases, creating a need for expansion of those facilities and more pollution in those facilities. And I know that some of the upstate landfills are planning on increasing their capacity. Commissioner Tisch, to the contrary, in her comments in the New Yorker article, New York should care about what happens to its waste stream. The lesson all kindergartners learn holds true for New York. Clean up after yourself. And quite frankly, I was surprised to hear that Commissioner Tisch testified today that she did not know what to do with all of the compost that they expect to get when the mandatory composting starts. Surely a plan for the compost should have been a high priority, especially when the former sanitation commissioner before her had recommended that there be mandatory composting at another city council hearing. That, this isn't a surprise, and plans should have been made. The last reason to support this bill is that composting in our own facilities will save New York taxpayers money by reducing the money spent on landfills. My advocacy for borough-wide composting facilities does not preclude the support for existing composting facilities run by Big Use and other private composting groups. When their outreach workers came to our buildings, we saw an increase in participation in the individual buildings in the curbside composting program. Their services are essential for a successful rollout of mandatory composting. And I hope that the City Council will restore funding for their programs, and Mayor Adams will put it back in his budget.
Thank you. And I appreciate it's easy being green. Please say hello to Sharon and Karen for me on the west side.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Gardner from Coleshots. I'm a little different. I'm a private counsel, and I represent, I got to fly, but I represent a Carter on Staten Island. And, but many of my comments, and I'll be quick, obviously I have to be, but many of the comments relate to the conversations that were happening this morning. And much of it has to do with the process that you pointed out from the chair and other council people, that the process was delayed, that there's been 3 years since the RFPs were required to be bid against. And since that time, what review has happened of those RFP awardees that have now only been announced in January? So there was a lot of talk about Cogent and perhaps some others, that if they were reviewed today or reviewed in January of 2024, would they have been an awardee? And Councilman Carr asked directly, would the sanitation department consider reopening bidding to the RFP? That would resolve a lot of the borough president's concerns as well as other concerns raised today. The process was challenged, and I know the administration's changed, and when process gets challenged, so do the results. So I represent Faztech Industries. Together with its sister company on Staten Island, they are the largest non-publicly traded company on Staten Island. They have the highest, no company has a higher safety record, and no company, and they charge 20 to 25% less than every other hauler. Yet they could not submit a bid to the RFP, a response to the RFP, because they had not been licensed yet by BIC. They would certainly love to submit an RFP response today, and Staten Island is different. And as Councilman Carr may agree with, it's one zone. The whole island is by itself as an island, and it's one zone. All of the core requirements that the borough president mentioned, which are lofty goals of safety, community representation, and access for the small businesses, which most of these are, and environmental concerns, none of that has changed for Staten Island. There will be no reduced traffic in Staten Island. Staten Island is truly different, and I submit the rebidding should occur at least for Staten Island, if not for all of the city that is not part of the pilot program, because as Department of Sanitation said, it will be 2 years before the pilot programs finish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Abreu, for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Charles DiPolito. I own Approved Storage and Waste Hauling, a commercial and medical waste carter business that's operated in New York since 1996. Most pertinent today is my experience with solid waste generated from healthcare facilities. Although I will submit a full written statement, I want to briefly note an important omission in the CWZ program. To ensure public safety, the State of New York's DOH and DSNY created several subcategories of waste, including construction demolition and regulated medical waste, among others. Each of these waste streams requires special handling, can only be dumped at permitted transfer stations, and may require additional training and equipment. However, the solid waste industry goes further than these existing subcategories to avoid hazardous commingling, including the use of the term healthcare or institutional waste, used by post-collection operators such as transfer stations, to describe any waste that is generated by a healthcare facility aside from regulated medical waste. This term was developed to ensure best practices, since regulatory issues have occurred when, for example, an employee at a hospital erroneously includes medical waste, hazardous waste, or radioactive waste in their general solid waste bins, causing major disruptions when the error is uncovered. This practice requires unique handling for institutional waste similar to those for medical. Therefore, institutional waste, like other subcategories, merit an exclusion in the CWZ. Healthcare facilities can include hospitals and nursing homes. Many generators, such as Northwell and Montefiore, have just recently learned about the omission of institutional waste as an exempt waste stream, and they're concerned. They want to retain a single hauler for their vast network of facilities, numbering in the hundreds, that span multiple boroughs and zones. They're liable if commingled waste arrives at a facility which is not permitted to handle it. And they are comfortable with the existing subset of companies with the expertise to differentiate regular waste from medical, hazardous, and radioactive waste. By placing institutional waste in the CWZ exclusions, the program would more accurately reflect the best safety practices. Further, fewer carters would be used to pick up the healthcare facilities' waste streams, reducing trips and emissions, which was the intent of the original law. I hope you will address this issue through legislation or by advocating for new agency rules that allow consolidating hauling activities at healthcare facilities. I'm happy to serve as a resource on this matter. Thank you.
What do you make of the commissioner's comments about medical waste and having trucks that only serve one purpose of waste versus
So that's a great
other
question.
institutional waste?
She was referring to regulated medical waste, and she was absolutely correct. Regulated medical waste cannot be commingled. When you speak about institutional waste, it's garbage generated at hospitals. So for example, Northwell has 1,200 facilities spread out over the 5 boroughs in Long Island. And they have a single hauler. Now they're going to be asked to use multiple haulers. The potential for medical waste, hazardous waste or radioactive waste to end up with the solid waste is a real issue. And when that hits these transfer stations, the state has to come down and it has to be dealt with. So a lot of the transfer stations don't accept institutional waste, which is solid waste generated at medical facilities. So the commissioner was speaking about regulated medical waste. This is solid waste generated at medical facilities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This panel is excused. The next in-person panel, Josh Kellerman, Sharon Brown, and Christine Datz Romero. Yeah, it's a hearing on commercial waste zones. Correct.
Hello, my name is Sharon Brown, and for the biodegradable things, I believe that composting should be in effect. We get that from the Bible where God told Moses and the children of Israel to bury their fecal matter waste. You can bury anything that's biodegradable, leaves, food, fecal matter, anything that can go under the ground or on top of the soil, like horse manure or something like that. It can spread and use to regrow things. We need to have some kind of processing plant so that you can put things together based on size, height, shape, even companies that maybe they'll reuse the things that they put out there. If they have hard containers or plastic containers or something like that, they can find a way to reuse it, especially since their products are basically, they come in the same kind of packaging. So those hard containers don't necessarily need to be thrown out. We can find a way for people to either deliver them back to the companies or through some process where we have a plant or something, we can get those things back to that, and the biodegradable things can be separated. We need to find a way to have this where it doesn't impact regular communities and things like that. We can do it in such a way where it can be corridors just for these things, so there won't be pollution and things like that. We need to make sure that the sanitation department is not being harmed themselves and people are not being run over by their trucks. We need some updated technology when it comes to these kinds of things, the composting, the melting down of plastic containers. However they've come to make these products, they can also do it in reverse. They can melt down the products and make something else with it. It doesn't have to go into a landfill. You can reuse those materials.
Thank you so much. Mr. Kellerman?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Josh Kellerman. I'm the Director of Public Policy at the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, RWDSU. We represent over 40,000 workers in New York, including workers at Grow NYC's community composting program. many of whom have recently lost their jobs due to budget cuts and deprioritizing the role of community composting in the broader program. I'm here to speak today in support of Intro 696. The RW supports this bill and will work closely with the sponsor, Councilmember Nurse, and other advocates to make this bill a reality. One thing I know for sure is that DASNY will never have citywide composting completely under control. It is too big and complex of a system to be run solely by a single agency. They need community partners to make this program a success. Let me say it again. Working with the community to create a closed-loop system in New York City for food is essential. The city can't do it alone. Community composting works and needs to be refunded and prioritized. Requiring composting facilities in each borough through Intro 696 will help solidify this collaborative role. DASNY will need to partner with community groups. The bill says that DASNY can meet its composting goals by counting community facilities in their capacity towards its goal. This would incentivize a decentralized composting network led by communities themselves, reducing DASNY's capital needs. It will also lead to a cultural shift that goes well beyond what DASNY can achieve alone. I'd also like to note that the cost concerns raised by DASNY earlier in this hearing didn't take into account the savings from not offshoring a significant portion of our food waste, as well as potential revenue streams from things like selling compost that are generated locally. And also a one-time capital expense to build these facilities will pay for itself over time in savings from waste diversion, climate benefits, soil creation, and more. The RW is proud to represent workers on the nonprofit side of our city composting infrastructure, and we hope the city and DASNY will recognize the value of these groups as they improve the overall health of our city. Thank you.
That's a good idea, the reselling of the items that are.
Thank you. This panel is hereby excused, and Josh, I hear you. The council and the speaker is making community composting a priority to restore the green jobs that were lost. Or rather, the jobs that were killed. Now we're turning over to Zoom. David Biederman.
Starting time.
Good afternoon. My name is David Biederman. I'm the president of Biederman Consulting, LLC. It's a solid waste consulting firm. And I'm the former executive director for SWANA, the Solid Waste Association of North America, and I provide safety training and other services to a large number of carters in New York City. And I've spent a lot of time over the last few months providing CWZ safety training to some of the awardees. I'm going to briefly discuss transparency and safety. First of all, the awardees need to know the schedule for CWZ implementation after Queens Central. Awardees need to buy trucks. It takes about up to 12 months to get a new garbage truck delivered. Awardees need to hire workers. They need to be ready to implement the various plans that they're required to do under the CWZ system and gear up for a very competitive battle to get customers on a zone-by-zone basis. The awardees are completely in the dark. Which zones are going to transition after Queens Central? When is that going to take place? What's the overall schedule? We heard that there may be some 2-year time period earlier today. The awardees deserve to know the entire schedule, and they deserve to know that now. The 30-plus BIC licensees who are not awardees also deserve to know the CWZ schedule so they can make some difficult business decisions. Should they sell now or go out of business? Or should they wait a few years until the zones in which their customers are located are subject to CWZ? These licensees also deserve to know the entire schedule now. Now, I agree, DSNY needs to evaluate the implementation of CWZ in Queens Central before transitioning the other zones. I urge this committee to play a meaningful role in that evaluation. But DSNY could have identified today the zones that will transition in 2025. For example, it makes a lot of sense for the other 4 zones in Queens to be the next ones to transition, perhaps beginning in the fall of 2025 and concluding at the end of the year. The Bronx could transition in early 2026, Staten Island in mid-2026.
Thank you so much. Your time has expired.
May I just say a few more moments, a few more points?
15 seconds, David.
Sure. Safety is one of the biggest reasons for having Local Law 199. The e-bikes pose an incredible threat to New York City pedestrians and the men and women who collect our waste. The New York Times noted last week e-bikes have made our city a nightmare. It's the Wild West out on the streets, and e-bike batteries are causing fires, killing New Yorkers. All of us, including solid waste collection workers, deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anna Sachs is next.
Starting time.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Anna Sachs. I'm the Legislative Chair of Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board, member of Save Our Compost. I'm going to be testifying for myself. I want to reiterate the MSWAB's and the Solid Waste Advisory Board's recommendations. One, reestablishing the compost siting task force and explicitly include members from each of the Solid Waste Advisory Boards. Two, in 696, explicitly include nonprofits as eligible entities, because right now it's kind of ambiguous whether or not nonprofits can be included there. And three, to prioritize current and recently functioning community composting operators to do the community composting once it's implemented. So I strongly support 696. I think we need to massively increase our composting capacity. And I think this is about like what type of city do we want to be? And this is one of the ways in which we can become a truly circular city. Also, I want to note that the Newtown Creek facility, which has been on and off for the past 5 years or so, cost over $1 billion to build. And so when we talk about costs, we should also talk about the cost of building out more of these anaerobic co-digesters. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Andrea Scarborough is next.
Starting time.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, Chair Brew and the members of the Sanitation and Solid Waste Committee. My name is Andrea Scarborough. I'm a former president of my civic, Abbotsford Park Civic Organization, a board member of the Queens Solid Waste Advisory Board, as well as a board member of the recently formed Southeast Queens Residents Environmental Justice Coalition, an organization that advocates for environmental policy changes and tangible improvements in the Southeast Queens community. Today, I am representing the organization Squirrage that I just mentioned. Squirrage is in support of Intro 0352. This is exactly what is required at this juncture as the committee takes steps towards implementation of this law. Speaking as a resident that lives in close proximity to waste transfer facilities, I am concerned as to the rules and regulations as well as oversight that will impact the haulers, but not the waste facility owners. In my community, I have haulers as well as waste transfer stations who are not haulers, but they accept waste from a myriad of third-party independent truckers that exist. While the CWZ legislation clearly addressed haulers, it is unclear if any consideration was given to the non-haul community who are allowed to continue to accept waste from everyone, including any independent trucker as well as the public. It is unclear if any zone requirements that exist for haulers exist for those third-party truckers that do business at those waste stations. What are the rules and the regulations of those transfer stations under the commercial waste zone legislation? Two of our members recently visited one of the waste stations in our area and was informed that they are not included in the CWZ law as they are not haulers. Scourge's concern is, if this is true, then does that mean that any independent
Thank you so
trucks from
much. Your time has
anywhere-
expired.
Can I continue, please, Chair? I'm almost done.
You got 15 seconds.
Okay. That any independent trucks from anywhere can continue to conduct their business with no regard for the newly implemented zoning laws, but put in place to reduce truck traffic and its emissions, pollutants that take place in an environmentally overburdened area? It sounds like business as usual. Our organization asks that Intro 352 be given full consideration and allow a CWZ task force to be established to address the flaws that may currently exist in the reform plan. Environmentally overburdened communities such as mine deserve no less. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have Daniel Wright.
Starting time.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Brew, council members, and members of the Solid Waste Committee. I'm Daniel Wright, president of Local 813, International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Teamsters Local 813 has been an advocate for commercial waste zone reforms for many years and supporters of Local Law 199. Local 813 represents a large number of workers in the private sanitation industry. Our goal is and has always been to see that the workers in this industry are treated fairly, able to earn good wages, have good benefits, be able to perform their jobs safely and effectively. Local Law 199 will see its implementation rolling out this fall and winter, and I am hopeful that the improvements are seen in the current unrealistic routing of collection routes that are all too common in the industry. Workers need to be trained and have proper tools and equipment to do their jobs safely and effectively. This is of benefit not only to the workers, but to the residents of New York City as well. Safely operating vehicles driven by trained professional workers will benefit all. Teamsters Local 813 has and will continue to be a voice for the workers in this industry. Legitimate union representation continues to be essential for these workers, and we will stand by them. I am concerned that some of the awardees are non-union employers or employers associated with questionable unions. It is important that workers have a voice in this industry, and quite often that voice is through their union representation. Local 813 remains committed to work with DSNY administration, New York City Council, and the Solid Waste Committee to be able to come up with common sense solution to issues in the commercial waste industry. Local 813 supports Intro 352, the creation of a commercial waste zone working group. This is a logical step in the process and can serve as a way to make sure all aspects of Local Law 199 are being adhered to. Teamsters Local 813 is confident that these reforms and implementing working groups will improve current conditions.
Thank you so much. Your time has expired.
You have another 15 seconds.
Confident that they will create further good union jobs in the commercial waste industry. We are here for the workers of this industry and look forward to participating in solutions and continuing improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Joyce Bialik from the Upper West Side.
Starting time.
Yes. So, dear council members and others, I am Joyce Bialik, and I'm a member of the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board, and We Act for Environmental Justice. I'm testifying on behalf of myself to support Intro 696 and to recommend certain improvements in the bill. Intro 696 establishes organic waste composting facilities in each borough to produce 180,000 wet tons of organic waste annually. This level of composting will help correct the current imbalance that favors anaerobic co-digestion over compost. The compost also will be a correction of that produced by sanitation in Staten Island, where plastics are part of the content. Plastics are not permitted at the new composting facilities. So positive so far, but my main concern is whether large numbers of residents will be adjusting their habits to divert their food scraps from their trash. A recent survey by We Act looked at impediments to such habit changes. We found that many people were misinformed about food scrap diversion and rodents and insects. Separating food scraps from trash does not increase rodents and insects in our midst. In fact, many residents require instructions about where to safely keep their food scraps in the kitchen. Such concerns could explain the very low diversion rates in Queens and Brooklyn of less than 5%. My question is, what's the value of more places to capture food scraps when a large number of our citizens are not participating in the program? So a good answer is reaching out and educating folks about best food scrap diversion practices and the reasons why our participation can lessen climate change. We Act in the Manhattan SWAB prepare.
Thank you so much. Your time has expired.
Okay, I have quick.
Yeah, please wrap up. Thank you.
Okay, a presentation to address these issues. But DSNY needs to take outreach and education across the entire city. And if we want to use our composting options. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Joyce. Claire Mifflin is next.
Starting time.
Thank you. I'm Claire Mifflin, Executive Director of the Centre for Zero Waste Design and a member of the Save Our Compost Coalition. I'd like to thank the Council for their support of refunding community composting and note that I am firmly in support of Bill 696 to establish a community composting facility in each borough. Although the Commissioner said that they can't even give away all the compost they make. I think that's because she's talking about the compost from Staten Island, which is not of the same quality as the compost you get from the community composters. They don't allow plastic bags when you drop off, so there's no bits of plastic in the compost. They also have more food scraps, so it's a more highly nutritious compost. And they also work with the communities to apply, and all their compost gets used in school gardens, community gardens, rain gardens, and street trees. So I think we really need to focus as a city on making our city greener, applying that compost to all the degraded soils we have citywide, and then we will need to, just as this bill suggests, ramp up community composting locally in each borough. I do think the size requirement should be reduced to start with to maybe like 300 tons a year to start, and then phased in through integration with parks and park waste and park maintenance facilities. I'm also in support of commercial waste zoning, but I'm concerned that it has to definitely include robust data requirements. And while it includes incentives for businesses to separate recycling and food waste, there are no such incentives for carters if it's cheaper for them to trash the food scraps rather than send it to organics facilities. What is the incentive for them to do just that? Also, I really care about the quality of public space and sidewalks. I mean, I think everybody has seen the proliferation of waste bins on our sidewalks in front of storefronts, impeding the quality of that business and the quality of life of the sidewalk. And so I think commercial waste zoning should require some kind of
Thank you so much. Your
incentive to
time has
shared-
expired.
Okay, I'll do it in 15 seconds. Shared containers in the street, I think, should be part of commercial waste zoning, and using the marine transfer stations to reduce negative impacts to EJ communities. I'm in support of Bill 0352 of a working group, and I can't understand why the Commissioner is not enforcing commercial or organic separation. I keep seeing McDonald's, Cava, Starbucks. There's no organics bins outside their stores. I don't know why this isn't being enforced. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Claire. Next up, we have Andrew Ridgey from the New York City Hospitality.
Starting time.
Hello, Mr. Chair, council members, staff. My name is Andrew Ridgey. I am the executive director of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. We represent restaurants and bars and nightclubs across the 5 boroughs. And just wanted to follow up on the testimony I submitted regarding intro number 352, which establishes the Commercial Waste Zone Working Group. I had been appointed and worked with the previous zone waste committee or working group for several years, and then was involved in the creation of the law through the council. Reading this legislation, I mean, we think a working group is an important idea to have that type of feedback and oversight. But unless we missed it, while it has a pretty diverse group of stakeholders that are appointed, I do not see any small business representatives. So we would urge the council to amend the bill to ensure that a variety of small business representatives are appointed to this committee, particularly from the food service industry. And we would obviously be honored to serve and be able to provide a lot of important perspective, value, and feedback. We've already been in discussions with Department of Sanitation, and I think we have just scheduled our first presentation for restaurants and other affected small businesses on what to expect. Obviously, it's first in that district in Queens, but then as it expands throughout the rest of the city, we will certainly be kind of front and center hosting seminars and forums for business owners so they know what to expect, how to comply, and navigate through this major transition. So that's all. Hope you will take our comments into consideration, and I will give the rest of my time back. Thank you.
Duly noted regarding your testimony, Andrew. Thank you. Justin Green is next.
Starting time.
Thank you, Chair Abreu, for your support for community composting. I'm the Executive Director of Big Reuse. and I'm here to testify in support of community composting, our community composting site remaining at Queensbridge, and Intro 696. Composting in New York City at scale is feasible. In Canada, there are multiple sites that compost 160 tons in vessel systems that are enclosed in buildings. That would be appropriate for New York City. The use of compost in the city actually is oversubscribed. Typically, when Fresh Kills composting site puts out that they are distributing, it is filled up in 24 hours. Like, the requests for compost are overwhelming. They can't fill all the demands for distribution. I think the issue here is more getting all the way to Staten Island from your community garden with a truck and to get that material back to your site. So there is still a huge demand for composting in the city, whether it's from Fresh Kills or community composting sites. And the city needs to do a close examination before investing in more digestion as a solution for our food scraps. Composting is the best solution as far as we're concerned. Digestion has a number of issues. One, it supports methane infrastructure, natural gas infrastructure, instead of decommissioning it as quickly as possible, which is what we should be doing to fight climate change. It's not cost effective. It costs $50 million for the National Grid interconnection at Newtown Creek, which only is going to heat 1,000 to 5,000 homes. You could have installed a lot of heat pumps for $50 million. And land applying the resultant sewage sludge, biosolids, is not a great solution with all the PFAS, microplastics, pharmaceuticals, heavy metals that end up in our combined sewer.
Thank you so much. Your time has expired.
Thanks.
Please wrap up, Justin, if you need to.
Great. So I think composting is feasible in New York City, and should be what we're looking at. And it has so many other benefits. And we looked at siting. When we're looking for sites, we looked at just yesterday. We were with environmental activists at National Grid site in Greenpoint, which is a huge brownfield that they've created over, decades of fossil fuel processing that could be converted into a composting facility that also helps bioremediate the soil and could also provide electricity through a solar farm.
Thank you,
Thanks
Justin. Next, we have Jessica Walker.
Starting time.
Jessica Walker, are you on? All right. Since she is no longer with us, we have no more members of the public wishing to testify. This hearing is hereby adjourned.